You pathetic old woman! You couldn't keep your husband satisfied, now you're nothing but a walking checkbook!
Barbara, a woman your vintage shouldn't be running around like this. Why don't you just step aside and let us take what's rightfully ours? What happens when the family you've built your empire for turns against you? A mother spends millions to give her son a perfect wedding, only to discover her husband and his fiancée plotting to steal everything: her money, her legacy, her very life. How far would you go when betrayal comes from those you love most? Welcome to Voices of Auntie Rose, where stories of family, forgiveness, resilience, and the courage to rise above betrayal come to life with heart and soul. We're so glad you're here, joining a community that celebrates the unbreakable human spirit. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an inspiring story. And it would be amazing if you could like this video, share it, or drop a comment, letting us know what time it is and which city or country you're watching from. Your shares and comments are the greatest gift, the powerful inspiration that keeps this channel growing and spreading meaningful life lessons every single day. Now, let's dive into today's story. The October morning sun filtered through the lace curtains of my Napa Valley home, casting delicate shadows across the marble countertop where I'd been preparing for weeks. At 77, I should have been relaxing in my retirement, perhaps taking a leisurely stroll through the vineyards that surrounded our estate. Instead, I found myself awake at 4:30, my hands trembling not from age, but from anticipation mixed with an unexplainable dread that had been gnawing at my stomach for days. My name is Barbara, and I owned one of Napa's most prestigious Michelin-starred restaurants, the Golden Vine. For 35 years, I'd built my empire from a small bistro into a culinary destination that attracted food enthusiasts from around the world. But today, none of that mattered. Today was supposed to be about my son Daniel's wedding to Olivia, the stunning 26-year-old architect who'd swept into our lives 3 years ago like a California wildfire, beautiful, consuming, and, as I was about to discover, utterly destructive. I stood in my expansive kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd tested recipes that would later grace the tables of celebrities and dignitaries. The coffee maker gurgled, filling the space with that familiar aroma that usually comforted me. But this morning, even my favorite Blue Mountain blend couldn't settle the unease that had taken root in my chest. Through the French doors, I could see the wedding venue we'd constructed in our vineyard, $200,000 worth of imported Italian marble, crystal chandeliers specially ordered from Prague, and a dance floor that alone cost $40,000. All charged to my American Express black card, all for my only child. Daniel appeared in the doorway, and my heart clenched at the sight of him. At 28, he had inherited his late father Richard's strong jawline and my hazel eyes, but this morning those eyes looked hollow, rimmed with dark circles that spoke of sleepless nights. He was already dressed in his Tom Ford tuxedo pants and white undershirt, the jacket still hanging in his room. The Patek Philippe watch I'd given him for his 25th birthday caught the light as he ran his fingers through his dark hair. "Mom," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I need to tell you something." I set down my Hermes agenda, where I'd been reviewing the timeline for the 400 guests arriving that afternoon. "What is it, sweetheart?" "Wedding jitters are completely normal. Your father threw up 3 times before our ceremony." I tried to inject humor into my voice, but it came out forced. He slumped into one of the Italian leather bar stools at the kitchen island. "It's about Olivia. She's been different lately. Distant. And she keeps meeting with Dad about the new wine cellar project, but they never include me in the discussions." My husband Michael chose that moment to enter, looking impeccable as always in his Brioni suit, his silver hair perfectly styled. At 79, he still carried himself with the confidence of a man who'd built a wine empire worth $50 million. He'd been my rock for 30 years, or so I'd believed. "Discussing the wedding timeline already?" Michael's voice was unnaturally bright, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. He poured himself coffee from our $8,000 espresso machine, avoiding direct eye contact with either of us. Olivia called. "She'll be here around 9 to go over some last-minute seating arrangements. Something about her Yale roommates needing to be separated from her Berkeley friends." "I didn't know there were seating issues," Daniel said, confusion evident in his voice. "We finalized everything 2 weeks ago." Michael waved dismissively, that gesture I'd seen him use 1,000 times when closing difficult business deals. "You know how brides are, son. Everything has to be perfect." I told her we could discuss it privately in the wine cellar. The acoustics are better down there for going over the details without disturbing your mother's preparations. The way he said privately sent ice through my veins. In 30 years of marriage, Michael had never been concerned about acoustics for wedding planning. Daniel's face darkened, and he stood abruptly, the stool scraping against our Brazilian hardwood floors. "I'm going to check on the flowers," he muttered, leaving his coffee untouched. After he left, Michael's demeanor shifted subtly. He moved closer to me, placing a hand on my shoulder. The gesture that once comforted me now felt like a lead weight. "Barbara, darling, you've been working too hard on this wedding. Why don't you take the morning off? Visit that new spa in Street Helena. I can handle Olivia's concerns." "The caterer needs me here at 10, I said, watching his reflection in the Sub-Zero refrigerator's surface. "It's a 400-person event, Michael. The seafood alone cost $35,000. I'm sure they can manage without you for once." His tone had an edge now, that subtle pushiness I'd learned to recognize when he wanted me out of the way for a business deal. But this wasn't about business, was it? As if summoned by our conversation, Olivia's white Tesla Model S pulled into our circular driveway at exactly 9 o'clock. I watched from the window as she emerged, wearing a cream-colored Chanel dress that I'd bought her last month, $3,000 charged to my account at Neiman Marcus. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless despite the early hour. She moved with the confidence of someone who'd grown up in Presidio Heights, attending private schools and country clubs. But there was something predatory in her stride this morning, something hungry that made my maternal instincts scream. "Barbara!" she called out, her voice dripping with false sweetness as she entered without knocking a familiarity that had always bothered me but which I'd tolerated for Daniel's sake. "You look tired. Are you sure you're up for today?" Michael said you've been overwhelmed. The casual use of my husband's first name, the fake concern, the way her eyes didn't quite meet mine at all clicked into place with sickening clarity. Every late-night business discussion about wine investments, every private meeting about wedding details, every time I'd found them laughing together in corners at family gatherings. The $40,000 Tiffany necklace Michael had supposedly bought for a charity auction but which had mysteriously disappeared. The weekend trips to Auberge du Soleil when he was allegedly meeting with distributors. My chest tightened, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. The room spun slightly, and I gripped the counter, my knuckles white against the Carrara marble. $250,000 I'd spent on this wedding, $500,000 over 3 years supporting their lifestyle while Daniel established his sommelier reputation. And this was how they repaid me, with betrayal served on a silver platter in my own home, on what should have been the happiest day of my life. I forced myself to maintain composure as Olivia air-kissed my cheek, her Chanel No. 5. Perfume, another gift from me, making my stomach churn violently. Michael had already disappeared toward the wine cellar, his footsteps echoing on the limestone stairs like a countdown to my personal apocalypse. Every instinct screamed at me to follow, but my legs felt like they'd been filled with cement. "Actually, Olivia," I managed, my voice surprisingly steady despite the bile rising in my throat, "I need to discuss the final payments with the florist. Why don't you head down?" Michael's already there. Her perfectly sculpted eyebrows arched slightly, a flash of something, annoyance? Suspicion? Crossing her features before she recovered with that practiced smile. "Of course, Barbara. Though you really should consider delegating more. A woman of your vintage shouldn't be running around like this." Vintage. Like I was one of Michael's overpriced bottles of Chateau Margaux, past my prime and ready to be discarded. The condescension dripped from her words like poison honey. After she descended to the cellar, her Jimmy Choos clicking against each step, I waited exactly 3 minutes. 3 minutes that felt like 3 lifetimes, during which I gripped the edge of my Viking range so hard my wedding ring, a 4-carat diamond Michael had presented 30 years ago, with tears in his eyes, cut into my palm. The servants' staircase. That's what saved me from complete collapse. The narrow passage we'd installed during renovations 5 years ago, meant for catering staff during our lavish parties. It led to a small alcove behind the wine cellar's temperature control unit, hidden by a decorative screen. Richard and I had laughed about it being our spy corner when we'd first discovered the acoustic quirk that let you hear everything in the main cellar. Now it would serve as my front row seat to betrayal. My hands shook so violently I had to grip the railing with both hands as I descended. Each step felt like walking deeper into my own grave. Through the ornate metal screen, I could see them clearly. The $60,000 chandelier we'd imported from Murano cast intimate shadows across the room, filled with wines worth more than most people's homes. Michael had his back to me, pouring what I recognized as our '95 Screaming Eagle, a $10,000 bottle we'd been saving for Daniel's wedding toast. Olivia stood close, too close, her manicured hand resting on his shoulder with casual intimacy that spoke of long practice. "Barbara's getting suspicious," Olivia said, taking the crystal glass from him. Her voice had lost all its sweetness, replaced by something calculating and cold. "Daniel practically confronted me this morning about our meetings." "Let them suspect," Michael replied, and I had to bite my knuckle to keep from gasping at the dismissive cruelty in his tone. "After tonight, it won't matter. Once you're legally part of the family, we can be more open about things." She laughed a sound like breaking crystal. "Open? Michael, darling, we both know that's never happening. Your wife would have to be completely senile not to notice. And despite what we tell everyone, Barbara's mind is sharp as a tack. Too sharp for her own good," he murmured, pulling her closer. "But that restaurant of hers has made us very comfortable. The Golden Vine alone brings in $3 million a year. Us," he said, "us. Not me, not our family. Us, them. And once Daniel inherits," Olivia continued, running her finger along the rim of the glass, "we'll have everything. The restaurant, the vineyard, this estate. Though honestly, I'm thinking we should convince Barbara to sell earlier. A woman her age running a Michelin-starred restaurant? It's almost embarrassing." My knees buckled. I slid down the wall, my Valentino dress bought specifically for today catching on the rough stone. 35 years. 35 years of building that restaurant from nothing, working 18-hour days while raising Daniel, creating something extraordinary from scratch. And they were discussing it like a stock portfolio to be liquidated. "Speaking of embarrassing," Michael said, and I heard the distinctive pop of another cork. "Did you see what she spent on this wedding? $250,000. As if anyone cares about imported marble and Czech crystal." "The flowers alone are vulgar," Olivia agreed. $40,000 for arrangements that'll be dead in a week. Though I suppose we should be grateful every dollar she wastes is one less we have to explain later. Later, when I was gone. When I was dead. They were planning for my death like it was a business merger. I pressed my hand to my mouth, tasting blood where I'd bitten my lip. Through the screen, I watched my husband of 3 decades kiss my son's fiancée with the passion he hadn't shown me in years. His hands tangled in her hair, the same hands that had once held Daniel as a baby, that had worn the wedding ring I'd placed there with such hope and love. The kiss deepened, and I saw him press something into her hand. The blue Tiffany box was unmistakable. Inside would be the $70,000 emerald bracelet I'd seen on his credit card statement, the one he'd claimed was for a charity auction. "Your wedding gift," he murmured against her lips. "The real one. Much better than the KitchenAid mixer Barbara picked out," she laughed, fastening it around her wrist. "God, can you imagine? A KitchenAid? As if I'd ever cook." "You don't need to. That's what Barbara's for. At least for now. The casual cruelty, the calculating coldness, it was like watching strangers wear the faces of people I loved. My stomach heaved, and I had to clamp both hands over my mouth to keep from vomiting right there. Sweat poured down my back, soaking through the silk of my dress. My chest felt like someone had reached in and was squeezing my heart with an iron fist. A sound from above made them spring apart. Footsteps, Daniel's distinctive gait. I recognized the pattern from years of listening for him to come home safe. My son, my baby boy, walking into this snake pit. "I should go," Olivia said quickly, smoothing her dress. "The makeup artist will be here soon." "Olivia," Michael called as she headed for the stairs. "Remember, after tonight, everything changes." "Everything," she agreed, with a smile that would haunt my nightmares. I stayed frozen in my hiding spot for another 10 minutes, maybe 20. Time had lost all meaning. My legs had gone numb, my hands wouldn't stop shaking, and my heart was racing so fast I thought it might simply give out. Part of me hoped it would. It would be easier than facing what came next. When I finally managed to climb back up the servants' stairs, my legs barely carrying me, I found Daniel in the kitchen. He was staring at his phone, his face pale. "Mom?" he said, looking up with those eyes that were so like his father's it hurt to look at them. "I just got the credit card alert." Did you really transfer $200,000 to Olivia's account yesterday for the honeymoon? The room tilted. I gripped the counter, my vision blurring. 200,000. Michael had transferred $200,000 of my money from the restaurant account I'd foolishly made joint to his mistress. On top of everything else, they were literally stealing from me. Mom? Daniel's voice seemed to come from very far away. Mom, you're scaring me. Should I call Dr. Morrison? I wanted to tell him everything, wanted to scream that his fiancée was sleeping with his father, that the two people he trusted most after me were planning to destroy us both. But looking at his concerned face, at the hope still lingering despite his doubts, I couldn't. Not yet. Not without proof that even he couldn't deny. I'm fine, I lied, the words ashes in my mouth. Just wedding day nerves. But I wasn't fine. I would never be fine again. In that moment, standing in my perfect kitchen, in my perfect home, preparing for what should have been a perfect day, I felt something inside me die. The trusting wife, the accommodating mother-in-law, the woman who believed in family above all else, she was gone, destroyed as thoroughly as if Michael had put a bullet in her instead of just a knife in her back. The next hour passed in a blur of forced smiles and mechanical movements. I watched myself from outside my body greeting the florist who arrived with $40,000 worth of peonies and garden roses, confirming details with the string quartet, reviewing the menu with our James Beard award-winning chef, all while my world crumbled like stale bread. Daniel hovered near me, his concern palpable. Mom, you're pale as a ghost. When's the last time you ate? Ate? The very thought made my stomach revolt. How could I swallow food when my throat was closed with unshed screams? But I forced myself to nibble on a piece of sourdough from our kitchen, each bite like sawdust in my mouth. At 10:30, my phone buzzed. A text from my younger sister Grace, who'd flown in from Boston. Where are you? I'm at the house with champagne. Can't wait to celebrate our Daniel's big day. Grace, my sister who'd survived her own brutal divorce 5 years ago when she'd discovered her husband's affairs with 3 different women. Grace, who now worked as a private investigator specializing in financial fraud. Grace, who'd warned me just last Christmas that Michael seemed different around Olivia. Sweetheart, I told Daniel, squeezing his hand with what I hoped looked like maternal affection rather than desperate need for anchor, I need to check on something with Aunt Grace. The photographers will be here at noon. Please make sure Olivia's ready. His jaw tightened at her name. She's been in the wine cellar with Dad for an hour. Says they're selecting vintages for the reception. Selecting vintages. Is that what they called it now? I found Grace in my study, her sharp blue eyes taking in my appearance with professional assessment. At 68, she looked like an older version of me, but with steel where I'd had softness, forged by betrayal into something unbreakable. Barbara. She stood immediately, setting down her champagne. What's happened? The dam broke. Not tears, I was beyond tears, but words. Everything poured out in a torrential whisper. The suspicious meetings, the discovered affair, the stolen money, the casual planning for my demise. Grace listened without interrupting, her face growing harder with each revelation. When I finished, she pulled out her phone with the efficiency of someone who'd seen too much to be shocked by human cruelty. First, we document everything. Thank God California's a community property state. That $200,000 transfer, wire fraud, their affair, breach of fiduciary duty, planning for your death while stealing from you. That's conspiracy. Grace, the wedding's in 4 hours, 400 guests. Perfect, she interrupted, a grim smile playing at her lips. Nothing like a public forum for accountability, but we need proof they can't deny or spin. She pulled out her tablet, fingers flying across the screen. Your restaurant's security system, it covers the wine cellar, doesn't it? My heart jumped. The insurance company required cameras everywhere alcohol is stored, full audio and video. Then we have them. Her smile turned predatory. Every meeting, every kiss, every incriminating word. Barbara, they're not just cheating, they're committing crimes. That transfer alone is federal wire fraud. As she worked, pulling up the security footage on her tablet through the restaurant's cloud backup, I heard Michael's voice booming from downstairs, playing the proud father-in-law, welcoming early arriving guests. The hypocrisy made me dizzy with rage. The footage was damning. Not just today, but weeks of meetings, touches, kisses. One video from 2 weeks ago made my knees buckle. Michael and Olivia in the cellar, him promising to take care of Barbara after the wedding, discussing power of attorney, conservatorship, ways to control my assets. My God, Grace breathed, they're planning to have you declared incompetent. The room spun. I clutched the desk, my mother's emerald ring, the one I'd worn every day since she died, catching the light. They wanted to steal everything. Not just my money or my life, but my very agency, my freedom, my mind. Aunt Barbara? A voice from the doorway made us both jump. Emma, Michael's assistant, stood there with an iPad, looking stricken. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I couldn't. I can't stay quiet anymore. Emma Chen, 24, fresh from Stanford Business School, whom Michael had hired 6 months ago, whom I'd mentored, invited to family dinners, treated like a daughter. I've been documenting everything, she said, her voice shaking. Mr. Whitfield, Michael, he made advances. When I refused, he said he'd destroy my career, but I kept recording. Every meeting, every threat. She held out the iPad with trembling hands. There's more. He's been embezzling from the vineyard. $3 million over 5 years, hidden in offshore accounts. And Olivia. She's been helping. She set up the shell companies. $3 million. On top of the $200,000, on top of the $70,000 in jewelry, on top of my shattered trust and broken heart. Grace took the iPad, her professional mask not quite hiding her satisfaction. Emma, you brave girl. This is evidence of criminal conspiracy, embezzlement, sexual harassment, and fraud. You've just handed us a federal case. There's one more thing, Emma whispered, glancing at the door. Olivia, she's been married before. Still is, actually. To someone named Nathan Cross in Los Angeles. She never divorced him. This whole wedding is bigamy. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place with savage clarity. My son wasn't even getting legally married. This entire $250,000 spectacle was a sham, a con job, a theft wrapped in white lace and lies. Call the FBI, I said, my voice steady as granite, but not yet. Not until after. Grace raised an eyebrow. After what? After I give my son the wedding gift he'll never forget. Emma shifted nervously. Mrs. Whitfield, there's something else. I heard them talking yesterday. Olivia's pregnant. But it's not Daniel's. The words hit like a physical blow. I sank into my leather chair, the one where Michael used to read to baby Daniel, where we'd planned our future, where I'd signed the papers making him co-owner of everything I'd built. Pregnant. With my husband's child. Planning to pass it off as my grandchild while stealing my legacy. When? I managed to choke out. About 2 months. They were planning to announce it after the honeymoon, claim it happened in Paris, make Daniel think he's the father. 2 months ago, we'd celebrated our 30th anniversary. Michael had given me diamonds, taken me to French Laundry, made love to me with what I'd thought was renewed passion, all while his mistress carried his child. Grace knelt beside me, gripping my hands. Barbara, we can stop this. Call it off now. Save Daniel the humiliation. No. The word came from somewhere deep, somewhere primal, somewhere that had survived betrayals and losses and 30 years of slow erosion. They want a wedding? They'll have one. They want an announcement? They'll get one. But it won't be the one they planned. I stood, legs steady now, fueled by rage so pure it felt like rebirth. In 3 hours, 400 of California's elite would gather in my vineyard, including Judge Harrison from the Superior Court, District Attorney Jennifer Walsh, who owed me favors, and Bernard Ashford, owner of the San Francisco Chronicle. Grace, can you get everything ready for a presentation? Every video, every document, every piece of evidence? Give me 2 hours, she said, already typing furiously. Emma, you beautiful, brave girl. Can you make sure the audiovisual system is set up for a special surprise? Tell them the mother of the groom has prepared a tribute video. She nodded, understanding gleaming in her eyes. I looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't the trusting fool who'd woken up this morning. This was someone else, someone forged in betrayal's fire. Someone who understood that sometimes the greatest gift you can give your child is the truth, no matter how much it burns. Ladies, I said, straightening my spine, let's give them a wedding they'll never forget. The next 2 hours required the performance of my lifetime. I returned to the master bedroom, the sanctuary that now felt like a crime scene, and mechanically applied my makeup. Each stroke of mascara, each dab of foundation was armor, protecting the warrior emerging from the ashes of the woman I'd been. My hands only trembled once, when I opened my jewelry box and saw the anniversary necklace Michael had given me 5 years ago. For the woman who made all my dreams come true, the card had read. Now I understood which dreams he'd meant: access to my fortune, my connections, my life's work. The Vera Wang mother of the groom dress hung in my closet, a $15,000 confection of champagne silk and delicate beading. I'd bought it 6 months ago, crying happy tears in the Neiman Marcus dressing room, imagining dancing with Daniel at his reception. Now it looked like a shroud. I put it on anyway. Let them see me in full regalia when their world imploded. A knock at the door made me freeze. "Barbara?" Michael's voice, dripping with false concern. "Darling, are you all right? You disappeared." "Just getting ready," I called back, surprised at how normal my voice sounded. "You know how long it takes at my age." He chuckled, that warm, familiar sound I'd fallen in love with decades ago. "You're beautiful at any age, sweetheart. I'll see you downstairs. Guests are starting to arrive." His footsteps retreated, and I had to grip the vanity to keep from screaming. The casual lies, the easy betrayal. How many years had he been this magnificent actor and I'd never noticed? My phone buzzed. "Grace, everything's ready. Emma has the AV system prepared. The FBI agent is my friend from Boston, Marcus Reed. He'll be here in casual clothes, seated with the guests. Judge Harrison confirmed she can perform an emergency hearing if needed." Another text, this one from Emma. "Mr. Cross, Olivia's actual husband, is driving up from LA. He'll be here by the ceremony." The pieces were falling into place like dominoes lined up for spectacular destruction. I descended the grand staircase at 12:30 to find our home transformed. The wedding planner had outdone herself, white orchids and roses everywhere, crystal gleaming, the space looking like something from a fairy tale. If only the guests knew they were attending a horror story. Daniel stood near the entrance greeting guests, looking handsome but haunted in his custom tuxedo. When he saw me, relief flooded his face. "Mom, thank God. Olivia's been acting strange. She keeps insisting we move up the ceremony time." Of course she did. The longer this went on, the more chance their house of cards would collapse. "Everything will proceed as scheduled," I assured him, squeezing his hands. "Trust me, sweetheart. Mother knows best." Guests poured in: venture capitalists, wine moguls, tech billionaires, all the beautiful people of Northern California society. Air kisses and compliments flowed like the champagne being served from silver trays. Nobody noticed my sister positioning herself near the projection screen we'd set up for the reception slideshow. Nobody saw Emma speaking quietly with the AV technician. Nobody observed the casual man in khakis who looked like any other guest, but whose FBI badge rested in his pocket. Margaret Spencer, owner of 3 Michelin-starred restaurants in San Francisco, grasped my hands warmly. "Barbara, everything looks magnificent. That Olivia is such a lucky girl, marrying into your wonderful family." "Lucky indeed," I agreed, tasting bile. At 1 o'clock, Olivia emerged from the bridal suite we'd prepared, and even I had to admit she looked stunning. The $50,000 Monique Lhuillier gown fit her like it was painted on, the cathedral-length veil framing her face like a halo. The lying, stealing, pregnant with my husband's baby face. She glided over to me, bridal radiance masking the viper beneath. "Barbara, don't you look appropriate?" The pause before appropriate was deliberate, a subtle dig at my age, my style, my existence. "You look absolutely perfect," I replied truthfully. "Exactly what you appear to be." Her eyes narrowed slightly, but before she could respond, Michael appeared. My husband of 30 years looked distinguished in his custom Italian tuxedo, the picture of paternal pride. When he kissed my cheek, I fought not to recoil from the Judas kiss. "Ready for our boy's big day?" he murmured, playing the devoted husband for our audience. "More ready than you could possibly imagine." The wedding planner, an efficient woman named Patricia, began herding everyone toward the vineyard where we'd set up rows of white chairs facing an arch covered in $60,000 worth of flowers. The Napa Valley afternoon was perfect, clear skies, gentle breeze, the kind of October day that made people believe in happy endings. The string quartet began playing Pachelbel's Canon as guests took their seats. I was escorted to the front row by Michael, his hand on my elbow feeling like a shackle. We sat in chairs that cost $500 each to rent, watching our son take his place at the altar with his groomsmen friends since childhood who had no idea they were about to witness a massacre. The music shifted to Wagner's bridal chorus. 400 heads turned as Olivia began her walk down the aisle, her father, a prominent Silicon Valley CEO, beside her. She moved with practiced grace, her smile bright enough to power San Francisco, her eyes locked on Daniel with what looked like love, but what I now knew was greed. The officiant, Reverend Williams from our family church, began the ceremony with words about eternal love and sacred bonds. Each phrase felt like mockery. Dearly beloved, we gather here today to witness the union of Daniel and Olivia. I watched my son's face, saw the doubt flickering behind his smile. He knew something was wrong. His instincts, better than mine had been, were screaming warnings. But he stood there, trapped by obligation, by the 400 witnesses, by the fortune we'd spent. Marriage is a sacred bond, Reverend Williams continued, built on trust, honesty, and mutual respect. Michael shifted beside me, and I caught him exchanging a look with Olivia, a look of triumph, of shared secrets, of plans about to come to fruition. They thought they'd won. In a few minutes she'd be family, legal family with legal claims to everything I'd built. The Reverend reached the moment that would change everything. If anyone here knows of any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace. The traditional pause, the moment nobody ever actually used anymore. The antiquated tradition that was about to become the most important question ever asked in my life. I stood up. The collective gasp from 400 guests sounded like wind through the vineyard. Every head turned toward me. Michael's hand shot out to grab my wrist, but I stepped forward, out of his reach, my voice carrying clear and strong across the shocked silence. I object. Daniel's face went white. Olivia's mask slipped for just a second, revealing pure rage before she recovered. Michael stood beside me, his voice low and threatening. Barbara. Sit down. You're making a scene. Oh, my dear husband, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I haven't even started. The silence stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. 400 pairs of eyes bore into me, but I only saw two Daniels, wide with shock and confusion. He deserved the truth, even if it destroyed him. Especially because it would save him. Mrs. Whitfield, Reverend Williams stammered, this is highly irregular. What's irregular, I said, my voice carrying the authority of someone who'd built an empire from nothing, is this wedding, this complete sham of a ceremony. Michael grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. Barbara, you're clearly having some kind of episode. Ladies and gentlemen, my wife has been under tremendous stress. I wrenched away from him with strength I didn't know I possessed. Oh, I'm having an episode all right, Michael. An episode of clarity after months of deception. Mom, what are you doing? Daniel's voice cracked like he was 13 again, scared and confused. I'm saving you, my darling boy. I turned to face the crowd, recognizing faces that had dined at my restaurant, celebrated at my home, benefited from my charity. You all came here to witness a wedding. But what you're really witnessing is a crime scene. Olivia stepped forward, her bouquet trembling. Barbara, you're obviously unwell. Someone should call a doctor. The only doctor we need is already here, I announced. Isn't that right, Dr. Morrison? I nodded to my physician in the third row. You examined me yesterday for my annual physical. Would you say I'm of sound mind? Dr. Morrison, bless him, stood up. Mrs. Whitfield is in excellent mental and physical health. Sharp as a tack, as always. Thank you, doctor. Now, Grace? My sister stepped forward with the remote control, and the large projection screen we'd erected for the reception flickered to life. What you're about to see, Grace announced in her prosecutor's voice. She'd been assistant DA before becoming a PI, is security footage from the Whitfield wine cellar. Time-stamped, authenticated, and legally admissible. The first video began playing. There was Michael and Olivia, locked in an embrace that was decidedly not father-in-law appropriate. The audio was crystal clear, every endearment, every plan, every mention of my money. Turn it off, Michael roared, starting toward the screen. But Marcus Reed, the FBI agent, stood up, his casual demeanor dropping. Mr. Whitfield, I suggest you stay where you are. FBI? Someone gasped from the crowd. The video continued. Olivia's voice filled the vineyard. Once Daniel inherits the restaurant in the vineyard, we'll have everything. Though honestly, Barbara's getting so old, we might not have to wait long. Michael's recorded response made several people gasp. I've been looking into conservatorships. If we can prove she's mentally declining, I can take control of everything now. Daniel staggered backward, his groomsman catching him. No, he whispered. No, this isn't real. There's more, sweetheart, I said gently. Emma? Emma stepped forward with her iPad, connecting it to the projection system. Financial documents filled the screen: offshore accounts, embezzled funds, fraudulent transfers. $3 million, Emma announced, her voice steady despite her obvious nervousness, stolen from the vineyard over 5 years. Another $200,000 transferred from Mrs. Whitfield's restaurant account just yesterday. Olivia's father jumped to his feet. This is slander. We'll sue. You can't sue for the truth, Mr. Chen, Grace interrupted. And speaking of truth, there's one more thing. The doors to the vineyard burst open, and a man strode in, tall, angry, and very much out of place in his jeans and t-shirt. Nathan! Olivia shrieked, the color draining from her face. Hello, wife, Nathan Cross said, holding up a marriage certificate. Imagine my surprise when a private investigator called to tell me my wife was getting married. Again. The crowd erupted. Bigamy. On top of everything else, we were witnessing attempted bigamy. That's not all, I said, my voice cutting through the chaos. Tell them about the baby, Olivia. She swayed, her hand going to her stomach instinctively. Daniel's eyes followed the movement, understanding dawning horribly. You're pregnant? He asked, hope and devastation warring in his voice. 2 months along, I confirmed. Want to tell everyone who the father is? Because we all know Daniel was in France 2 months ago for the wine exhibition. Alone. Michael made a break for it then, actually trying to run through the crowd. But Judge Harrison, all 5'2" of her, stuck out a foot and sent him sprawling into the extremely expensive flower arrangements. Michael Whitfield, Agent Reed announced, producing handcuffs, you're under arrest for embezzlement, wire fraud, and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent. This is your fault, Olivia screamed at me, her perfect composure finally shattering completely. You pathetic old woman. You couldn't keep your husband satisfied, so of course he came to me. You're nothing but a walking checkbook, a dried-up hag who— The crack of Daniel's hand across Olivia's face echoed through the vineyard. My gentle son, who'd never raised a hand to anyone, stood there shaking with rage. That's my mother, he said, his voice deadly quiet, the woman who raised me alone after my father died, who built a restaurant empire while making sure I never felt unloved, who spent $250,000 on this farce because she wanted me to be happy. His voice broke, the only real parent I've ever had. He turned to Michael, who was now in handcuffs. You've been my stepfather for 15 years. I trusted you. I loved you. And this is what you were doing? Stealing from her? Planning to destroy her? With my fiancé? Daniel, son. You don't understand, Michael began. I understand perfectly. Daniel pulled off his wedding ring, the one that had cost $20,000, charged to my credit card, and threw it at Olivia's feet. The wedding's off, obviously. Nathan Cross laughed bitterly. Oh, it was never on, buddy. She's been married to me for 4 years. This whole thing? It's fraud. You've made it this far, go ahead and hit like to let me know you're still with me. You know, every share you make might help someone out there find a little hope. And before we continue, don't forget to subscribe because who knows, the next story might just touch your heart. District Attorney Walsh, who'd been watching with professional interest, stood up. Mrs. Chen or Mrs. Cross or whatever your name is, you're going to want to contact a lawyer. Bigamy, fraud, embezzlement, you're looking at significant jail time. Olivia's mother fainted. Actually fainted, requiring several guests who were doctors to rush to her aid. Her father stood frozen, his reputation crumbling in real time as phones came out, recording everything for social media. $3 million, someone whispered. They stole $3 million. And that's just what we've found so far, Grace announced. The FBI will be conducting a full forensic accounting. I walked over to Daniel, who stood shell-shocked amid the ruins of his wedding. I'm so sorry, baby. I wanted to tell you privately, but they would have spun it, denied it, made you doubt what I knew. He pulled me into a fierce hug, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I let myself cry. You saved me, Mom. God, you saved me from marrying into that. There's one more thing, Emma said quietly, approaching with a document. Mrs. Whitfield, I've been in contact with your insurance company. The embezzlement is covered under your commercial crime policy. You'll recover most of the stolen funds. As the FBI led Michael and Olivia away, she in her $50,000 wedding dress, he in his Italian tuxedo, the crowd began to disperse, murmuring with shock and scandal. This would be the talk of Napa Valley for decades. Margaret Spencer approached me, her eyes shining with admiration. Barbara, that was the bravest thing I've ever seen. You sacrificed your own reputation to save your son. My reputation? I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. My reputation is that of a woman who built a Michelin-starred restaurant from nothing, who raised an incredible son, and who refused to be a victim. I'll take that reputation any day. As the sun began to set over the vineyard, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I stood among the ruins of the wedding that never was. $500,000 in flowers, food, and decoration, all for a ceremony that lasted less than 10 minutes. But it was worth every penny to see my son free, to see justice served, and to reclaim my life from those who would have stolen it. Tomorrow, I would begin divorce proceedings, deal with the FBI investigation, and start rebuilding. But tonight, surrounded by the people who truly loved me, Daniel, Grace, Emma, and the friends who'd stayed to support me, I was exactly where I needed to be. The wedding was definitely one nobody would ever forget. The vineyard looked like a battlefield after the war. Overturned chairs, crushed bouquets worth thousands of dollars, and abandoned champagne glasses caught the last rays of sunlight. The catering staff stood frozen, unsure whether to serve the 5-course meal that had cost $70,000 or pack it away. 400 lobster thermidors weren't going to eat themselves. Serve the food, I told the head caterer, surprising myself with my steadiness. Everyone who stayed deserves a meal after that performance. Consider it a celebration of truth instead of lies. Daniel hadn't let go of my hand since the FBI had driven away with Michael and Olivia. His grip was the only thing keeping me upright, as the adrenaline began to fade and the full weight of what had just happened crashed over me. Mrs. Whitfield? Agent Reed approached, having changed from his casual clothes into his FBI windbreaker. We need to get your full statement. The Bureau's Financial Crimes Unit is already freezing the offshore accounts Emma identified. Emma stood beside him, her tablet clutched like armor. This brave young woman, who'd risked her career to expose the truth. Mrs. Whitfield, there's something else. I've been going through the files, and it's worse than we thought. Michael has been planning this for years. We moved to my study, away from the devastation of the reception area. Grace had already set up a war room of sorts, laptops, documents, and evidence boxes arranged with military precision. Judge Harrison had stayed, still in her wedding attire, ready to issue emergency orders if needed. Show me, I said, sinking into my leather chair, the same one where I'd signed papers trusting Michael with everything. Emma connected her tablet to my desktop monitor. These emails go back 7 years. He was discussing retirement options with someone named Victoria Ashton. I knew that name. Victoria had been our accountant before she'd suddenly moved to Switzerland 5 years ago. He was always pushing me to use her for the restaurant's books, I remembered aloud. Because she was helping him hide money, Emma explained, pulling up spreadsheets that made my eyes blur. Every month, small amounts, $5,000 here, $8,000 there, diverted to accounts in the Cayman Islands. Over 7 years, it's nearly $1 million on top of the $3 million we already found. $4 million. $4 million stolen while he slept beside me, while he played stepfather to Daniel, while he smiled at charity galas as the devoted husband of Barbara Whitfield. The pregnancy, Daniel said suddenly, his voice hoarse. Olivia's pregnancy. That was the endgame, wasn't it? Get her pregnant, pass it off as mine, lock in the inheritance. Agent Reed nodded grimly. We found text messages on the phone we confiscated. They planned to announce the pregnancy after the honeymoon, claim you were the father, then gradually take control of your mother's assets for the baby's future. With a grandchild in the picture, they figured Mrs. Whitfield would be more willing to transfer assets, or they could argue she was being selfish if she resisted. I thought of the nursery I would have decorated, the college fund I would have started, the love I would have poured into a grandchild that wasn't even Daniel's. The manipulation was so calculated, so cruel, it took my breath away. Mrs. Whitfield, Judge Harrison spoke up. I can issue an emergency restraining order tonight. Neither of them can come within 500 feet of you or Daniel. I'll also freeze all shared assets immediately. What about the restaurant? I asked. The Golden Vine was my life's work, my legacy. He's on the corporate documents, as co-owner. Fraud vitiates everything, Grace said, her legal training showing. Every document he signed while actively defrauding you can be challenged. The marriage itself might be voidable given the level of deception involved. My phone buzzed. Margaret Spencer's name appeared on the screen. Barbara, I'm still at the venue. You need to see what Olivia's mother is doing. We hurried back outside to find Mrs. Chen attempting to load wedding gifts into her Mercedes, actually stealing the presents while the FBI was processing her daughter. The audacity was breathtaking. Those aren't yours, I said calmly. She whirled around, her designer makeup streaked with tears. After what you've done to my family, this humiliation, you owe us at least— Your daughter, I interrupted, is a bigamist, embezzler, and fraud who was sleeping with my husband while engaged to my son. The only thing I owe your family is a lawsuit for the emotional distress and financial damages. Mr. Chen appeared, trying to maintain his CEO composure despite his world crumbling. Barbara, surely we can handle this discreetly. No need for further scandal. I'll write you a check for whatever Olivia took. A check won't undo the betrayal. It won't give my son back his innocence or me back my trust. Your daughter and my husband are going to prison, Mr. Chen. Your check can't change that. Behind them, Nathan Cross was loading his car with grim satisfaction. 4 years, he called out. 4 years of marriage, and she told me she was traveling for work. Turns out work was seducing rich older men and their sons. You knew? Daniel asked, his voice dangerous. Suspected. That's why I hired my own PI 6 months ago. When they contacted me about today, everything clicked. Nathan held up a flash drive. 4 years of evidence. Other men she's conned. 3 in Los Angeles, 2 in San Diego. Your family isn't her first attempt at this. A serial con artist. Olivia wasn't just an opportunist who'd fallen for Michael, she was a professional predator who'd targeted us specifically. The baby, I said suddenly, if she's really pregnant. Oh, she's pregnant all right, Nathan said bitterly, but here's the thing, I had a vasectomy 2 years ago. So whoever the father is, it's not me, and based on the timeline, it's probably not your husband either. Another layer of lies. Even the pregnancy, the ultimate manipulation tool, was built on deception. Grace's phone rang. She listened intently, then hung up with a sharp smile. That was my contact at the Chronicle. The story's going live in an hour. Napa Valley wedding reveals $1 million fraud scheme. Michael and Olivia's mugshots will be on the front page tomorrow. The social destruction would be complete. In Napa Valley's insular high society, reputation was everything. Michael would never be able to show his face at another wine auction or charity gala. His precious status, the thing he'd valued more than our marriage, was gone forever. Mom, Daniel said quietly, what happens now? I looked at my son, my brave, betrayed boy, and then at the ruins of the wedding around us. Now we rebuild, better and stronger. Without lies, without manipulation, without toxic people who see us as bank accounts instead of human beings. The guests, Emma said, gesturing to the 100 or so people who'd stayed, now eating lobster thermidor on tables, meant for a reception that would never happen. They're all recording everything. This is going viral on social media. Good. Let the world see what happened when you tried to destroy Barbara Whitfield. Let them know that 77 wasn't too old to fight back, that a mother's love could be fierce as well as gentle, that sometimes the best gift you could give your child was the destruction of a beautiful lie. Agent Reed returned with more news. We've seized their phones and computers. The digital forensics team is going through everything. Mrs. Whitfield, you should prepare yourself, there may be more victims. This appears to be a sophisticated operation that goes beyond just your family. More victims. More families destroyed by the man I'd shared my bed with and the woman my son had almost married. As the sun completely set and the expensive fairy lights illuminated the bizarre scene, FBI agents collecting evidence among wedding decorations, guests eating reception food while live tweeting a scandal, my son still in his tuxedo but freed from a marriage that would have destroyed him. I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Power. Real power. Not the kind that came from money or status, but the kind that came from standing up, speaking truth, and refusing to be a victim. Tomorrow, the lawyers would descend. The divorce proceedings would begin. The criminal trials would start their long journey. But tonight, surrounded by the people who truly cared about me, eating $70,000 worth of food that had been meant to celebrate a lie, I was exactly where I needed to be. The wedding from hell had become my liberation. The last guest left at midnight, after consuming what was supposed to be wedding cake, a $15,000 masterpiece of fondant and Swiss meringue that now tasted like sweet revenge. Daniel and I stood in the empty vineyard, surrounded by the debris of what should have been the happiest day of his life. "I need to know everything," he said quietly, his bow tie hanging loose around his neck. Every sign I missed, every red flag I ignored. We walked through the gardens. Michael had designed another lie, as I discovered from the receipts. He'd paid a landscape architect $40,000 of my money while taking credit for the vision. Even the beauty around us was built on deception. The signs were there, I admitted, leading him to the gazebo where his father, his real father, Richard, had proposed to me 38 years ago. The late nights at the office when the vineyard was closed. The way Olivia always knew about business decisions before you did. The jewelry charges on credit cards that never materialized as gifts for me. Daniel's hands clenched into fists. 3 weeks ago, I came home early from that tasting in Sonoma. Her car was here, but they said they were reviewing architectural plans for the new tasting room. I actually apologized for interrupting. "Sweetheart, predators like them are experts at making victims feel guilty for their own suspicions. It's not your fault." My phone rang, Grace calling from the police station where she'd gone to monitor the booking process. "Barbara, you're not going to believe this. Olivia just confessed to everything, trying to cut a deal. She's throwing Michael under the bus so hard the tire marks will be permanent." I put her on speaker so Daniel could hear. "She claims Michael seduced her, that he promised to divorce you and marry her after getting control of your assets. She's got recordings, Barbara. She was building an insurance policy against him the whole time." Of course she was. No honor among thieves, especially when the thieves were also lovers conspiring against their own family. "There's more," Grace continued. "The pregnancy? It's real. But Nathan was right. It's not Michael's. She's been having another affair with her yoga instructor, some 25-year-old named Brad. She was going to pin it on Daniel, collect child support and inheritance, then disappear with Brad to Costa Rica." Daniel made a sound like he'd been punched. I pulled him close, feeling him shake with rage and disgust. "Let her testify," I said coldly. "Let her bury Michael and herself. They deserve each other." After Grace hung up, Daniel and I sat in silence under the stars. The same stars I'd wished upon the night he was born, promising to protect him always. Tonight I'd kept that promise in the most spectacular way possible. "The money?" he said suddenly. "How bad is it really? 4 million confirmed stolen so far. But the restaurant's worth 12 million, the vineyard another 15, and the house is paid off. We're not ruined, just robbed. And most of it's recoverable through insurance and seizure of their assets." I meant the wedding. "How much did this disaster cost?" I laughed, surprising myself with genuine mirth. $580,000 all told, but you know what? It was worth every penny to expose them before you were legally tied to that viper. Emma appeared in the garden, having stayed to help coordinate with the FBI. "Mrs. Whitfield, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but there's something else." I was going through Michael's private server, the one he thought I didn't know about, and I found communications with a Dr. Patricia Hendricks. The name sent ice through my veins. Patricia Hendricks was a psychiatrist who specialized in elder care evaluations, specifically competency hearings. "He had an appointment scheduled for next week," Emma continued, her voice tight with anger. "The plan was to have you evaluated, claim the stress of the wedding had caused a breakdown. He'd paid her $200,000 to guarantee an incompetency ruling. The calculated cruelty stole my breath. While I was planning his stepson's wedding, he was planning my institutionalization. That's attempted elder abuse," Judge Harrison said, appearing behind Emma. She'd stayed too, still in her wedding attire but now wearing her judicial robes over them, a surreal image that somehow fit this surreal night. "I'm issuing additional warrants. Dr. Hendricks will lose her license and face criminal charges." "How many people were in on this?" Daniel asked, his voice hollow. "At least 6 that we've identified so far," Agent Reed answered, joining our growing gathering in the garden. This wasn't just an affair that got out of hand. This was a criminal conspiracy involving your stepfather, Olivia, the accountant in Switzerland, the psychiatrist, Olivia's actual husband who was getting paid to stay quiet, and at least one banker at Wells Fargo who was facilitating the transfers. A conspiracy. My marriage hadn't just failed, it had been murdered by a cabal of criminals who saw me as nothing more than a mark. Mrs. Whitfield, Agent Reed continued, we're going to need you to go through everything, every gift, every transaction, every conversation you can remember. This is now a RICO case. Racketeering charges carry serious federal time. RICO. The same laws used to take down mob families would be used against my husband and his mistress. There was poetic justice in that. Tomorrow, I said firmly. Tonight, I need to process this with my son. They all understood, gradually dispersing until it was just Daniel and me again, sitting in the ruins of a wedding that had cost more than most people's houses. I was going to propose a toast, he said suddenly, laughing bitterly. At the reception, I'd written this whole speech about how Michael had shown me what a good husband looked like, how he'd been the father figure I needed after Dad died. I was going to thank him for loving you, for loving us. The pain in his voice broke my heart all over again. He did love us, in his way. That's what makes this so cruel. Sociopaths can mimic love perfectly, they just can't feel it. How do you trust anyone after this? Daniel asked, the question I'd been asking myself all day. You don't, I said honestly. Not for a while. Trust has to be earned, built slowly, proven over time. But Daniel, not everyone is like them. Look at Emma, risking her career to expose the truth. Look at Grace, dropping everything to help us. Look at Judge Harrison, staying past midnight to ensure we're protected. There are good people. We just got very good at attracting the bad ones because we were too trusting, too generous, too willing to believe the best. No more, he said firmly. No more, I agreed. We stood to go inside, to face the master bedroom where I'd have to sleep alone for the first time in years, knowing the man who'd shared that bed had been plotting my destruction. Mom, Daniel said, stopping me, I'm proud of you. What you did today took incredible courage. You could have let the wedding happen, confronted them privately, saved face. But you stood up in front of everyone we know and chose truth over reputation. That's heroic. I pulled him into a fierce hug, this boy who'd become a man, who'd had his innocence ripped away but his integrity left intact. We're going to be okay, I whispered, not sure if I was reassuring him or myself. Better than okay, he said, surprising me with his conviction. We're going to be free. As we walked back to the house, our house, no longer Michael's eye saw movement in the master bedroom window. For a moment, my heart stopped, thinking somehow he'd returned. But it was just Grace, already packing Michael's things into boxes marked evidence and trash. Tomorrow would bring lawyers, investigators, and reporters. The scandal would explode across social media, probably making national news. Our family tragedy would become public entertainment. But tonight, in my house that was mine again, with my son safe from a marriage that would have destroyed him and my sister standing guard like an avenging angel, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. The war was far from over trials, divorces, and recovery would take months or years. But the first battle was won, and the enemy was in custody. $580,000. That's what today's revelation had cost. Freedom, it turned out, was priceless. I couldn't sleep that first night. Every creak of the house sounded like Michael returning. Every shadow looked like Olivia lurking. At 3 a.m, I found myself in the wine cellar, the scene of the crime, with a glass of our cheapest Pinot. The $95,000 collection Michael had curated with my money meant nothing now. It was all evidence of his theft. Grace found me there at dawn, wrapped in my silk robe, surrounded by bottles worth more than most people's cars. Couldn't sleep either? She asked, settling beside me on the cold stone floor. I keep thinking about the small things, I admitted. How he'd massage my feet while planning to institutionalize me. How he'd kiss me goodbye every morning while texting her. The cruelty of maintaining such an elaborate performance. Barbara, there's something else we discovered last night. Grace's tone made my stomach drop. Emma found medical records in Michael's files. He's been having you tested for months without your knowledge. Tested? Blood work he claimed was routine, but was actually screening for dementia markers. Hair samples from your brush sent to labs. He even had a neurologist review brain scans from your last MRI, the one for your migraines. He was building a medical case for incompetency. The violation felt physical, like being stripped naked in public. My own medical privacy had been weaponized against me. The neurologist found nothing, of course. Grace continued. Your brain is perfectly healthy, but Michael was doctor shopping, looking for someone who'd say otherwise for the right price. My phone rang an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Mrs. Whitfield? The voice was young, female, frightened. This is Ashley Martinez. I was Olivia's assistant at the architectural firm. I saw the news and I have information you need. 20 minutes later, Ashley sat in my kitchen, a 23-year-old girl who looked like she hadn't slept in days. Daniel joined us, still in yesterday's tuxedo pants and undershirt, looking like a gorgeous disaster. Olivia wasn't just embezzling from your family, Ashley began, her hands shaking around her coffee cup. She's been running this scheme at 3 different firms over 5 years. She targets senior partners, has affairs with them, gets access to client funds, then disappears when it gets too hot. How much? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. From what I could trace? About $8 million total. She has accounts in the Bahamas, Costa Rica, and Singapore. The FBI only found the Cayman accounts because those were Michael's. Hers are much better hidden. $8 million. This 26-year-old had stolen $8 million while my husband helped her try to steal millions more from me. There's more, Ashley said, pulling out a flash drive. She had files on other targets. Your family wasn't the only one she was working. There's a tech billionaire in Palo Alto, a real estate developer in Marin, and 2 venture capitalists in San Francisco. She was juggling 5 different marks. Including my husband, I said, the truth clicking into place. He thought he was the seducer, but he was being played too. Daniel laughed bitterly. So the con artist got conned by a better con artist. There's some poetic justice there. Agent Reed arrived then, looking haggard but satisfied. We arrested Dr. Hendricks an hour ago. She broke immediately, gave us everything. Michael had promised her $1 million, plus a position as head of psychiatric services at a private facility he was planning to put you in. A facility. A prison disguised as medical care, where I would have been drugged into compliance while they drained every penny. Mrs. Whitfield, Agent Reed continued, the banker at Wells Fargo, Harrison Crowley, is also in custody. He's been facilitating illegal transfers for multiple criminal operations. Your husband's scheme was actually small compared to some of his other clients. My phone rang again, this time it was Margaret Spencer. Barbara, I'm at the restaurant, you need to get here. The media is camped outside, but that's not the problem. There's someone here claiming to be Michael's first wife. First wife. Michael had told me his first wife died in a car accident 15 years ago, before we met. It's why I'd been so patient with his grief, so understanding of his need for space. We drove to the Golden Vine in Daniel's Tesla, weaving through news vans and reporters shouting questions. Inside, sitting at table 7, my favorite table, where Michael proposed, was a woman in her 60s, elegant and cold as winter. Hello, Barbara, she said, standing with practiced grace. I'm Vivian Whitfield. The actual Mrs. Whitfield, since Michael and I never officially divorced. The room spun. I gripped the back of a chair, feeling Daniel steady me. That's impossible. You died. He showed me the death certificate. Forged, like everything else about him. Vivian's smile was razor sharp. I died when I discovered he'd emptied our accounts and disappeared. $20 million gone overnight. I've been hunting him for 15 years. 20 million, plus the 4 million from me, plus whatever he'd stolen before Vivian. So my marriage is invalid. Bigamy, just like his little girlfriend. Quite the pair, aren't they? Vivian pulled out a folder thick with documents. I've been working with the FBI for 3 years, tracking his money. When Agent Reed called about your case, everything connected. My 30-year marriage was a lie. Every anniversary, every renewal of vows, every legal document, all fraudulent. There's a silver lining, Grace said, her legal mind already working. If the marriage is invalid, he has no claim to any marital assets. The restaurant, the vineyard, the house, they're all yours, free and clear. Also, Vivian added with savage satisfaction. The prenuptial agreement he made you sign? Worthless. But the life insurance policies he took out on you? Those are evidence of conspiracy to commit murder. Life insurance. Of course. Why steal when you could inherit? How much? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. 10 million in policies purchased over the last 2 years. You were going to have an accident after the honeymoon. Olivia would console the grieving widower, marry him after a respectable period, and they'd split everything. Murder. They weren't just planning to rob me or institutionalize me. They were planning to kill me. Daniel made a sound like a wounded animal. They were going to murder my mother for money? The honeymoon in Belize, I said suddenly, pieces clicking together. Michael insisted on booking it, said it was his wedding gift to you both. Lots of accidents happen in Belize. Drownings. Falls from cliffs. Mom was supposed to visit you there, Daniel whispered, understanding dawning horribly. Week 2 of the honeymoon. You insisted on coming to give us space but still celebrate. The invitation Michael had pushed so hard for. The seaside villa with the dangerous cliff path. The boat trips he'd planned. All death traps disguised as family bonding. We have enough for attempted murder charges, Agent Reed said quietly. This goes far beyond fraud. I sat down hard, the weight of it all crushing. They hadn't just wanted my money or my sanity. They'd wanted my life. Barbara, Vivian said, her voice softer now, I know this is devastating, but you survived. You exposed them. You're stronger than I was. I ran and hid. You stood and fought. What happens now? I asked, looking at the restaurant I'd built, the empire that had almost cost me everything. Now, Agent Reed said, they face life in prison. Real life, not the cushy minimum security they were expecting. Attempted murder, elder abuse, fraud, embezzlement. Conspiracy Michael Wilde behind bars. And Olivia? Just made a full confession, including the murder plot. She's trying to trade information for a lighter sentence, but with the bigamy, fraud, and conspiracy charges, she's looking at 25 to life. 25 to life. The golden girl who'd walk down my vineyard aisle in a $50,000 dress would spend her best years in an orange jumpsuit. The baby? Daniel asked quietly. Will be born in federal custody. The biological father, the yoga instructor, has already signed away parental rights. The child will go into foster care unless... Agent Reed looked at me meaningfully. Unless I claimed it. The grandchild that wasn't my grandchild, innocent of its parents' crimes. That's a decision for another day, I said firmly. Today, I had enough to process. My husband was a bigamist planning my murder. My daughter-in-law was a serial con artist. My marriage was invalid. My life had been saved by my own suspicion and the courage of a young assistant. $580,000 for a wedding, $4 million stolen over 7 years, $10 million in life insurance policies on my head, 1 life saved by speaking the truth. The math, in the end, was simple. The next morning brought a tsunami of media attention. News vans lined our private road like carnival attractions, reporters standing in front of our estate's gates delivering breathless updates. The wedding scam of the century, one channel called it. Another went with Napa Valley's Black Widow. Every outlet had their own spin on our family's destruction. I stood at the window of my bedroom alone now, watching the circus below. Daniel knocked gently before entering with coffee and toast I wouldn't eat. Nathan Cross is doing a tell-all interview with 60 Minutes, he said, setting the tray down. He's claiming he was a victim, too, that Olivia manipulated him into silence with threats and blackmail. Everyone's a victim when the cameras are rolling, I said, turning away from the window. Did Grace call? She's at the courthouse. Michael's bail hearing is in an hour. The prosecutor is asking for no bail given the murder plot. Murder plot. Even after everything, those words felt surreal. The man who'd held my hand through chemotherapy 5 years ago a lie, I now realized, as he'd probably been hoping the cancer would finish me, had been planning my death. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Mrs. W, urgent. Found something huge. Coming over with FBI. 20 minutes later, Emma arrived with Agent Reed and a woman I didn't recognize, a forensic accountant named Dr. Sarah Chen, who specialized in untangling complex fraud schemes. Mrs. Whitfield, doctor, Chen began, spreading documents across my dining table. We've uncovered something that changes everything. Michael wasn't just stealing from you. He's been running a Ponzi scheme through the vineyard for 12 years. The room tilted. I gripped the table, feeling Daniel's steady hand on my shoulder. Explain, I managed. He was selling the same cases of wine to multiple investors, promising massive returns on futures wine that didn't exist yet. He'd use new investor money to pay off old investors. Classic Ponzi structure. The total fraud? $42 million. 42 million. Note 4 million. Note 8 million. 42. But the vineyard doesn't produce enough to, I started. Exactly. He was selling wine that would never exist, from harvest that could never happen. He promised investors 10 times what your vineyard could actually produce. It was always going to collapse. When? Daniel asked, his voice tight. Within 6 months. He knew it too. That's why the timeline with Olivia accelerated. He needed you dead, Mrs. Whitfield, before the scheme imploded. Your life insurance would have bought him time to disappear. I thought of all the investors, friends, colleagues, people who'd trusted the Whitfield name, my name. The victims? 83 individuals and 12 institutional investors. Some people invested their entire retirement savings. 83 families destroyed, retirements stolen, lives ruined, all while Michael played the devoted husband and successful vintner. There's more, Emma said quietly, pulling up files on her tablet. Remember Vivian, his first wife? I did some digging. She wasn't the first. There were 2 before her. 2 more wives, 2 more women he'd destroyed. Patricia Morse in Chicago, 1987 to 1993, cleaned out, left with nothing. She committed suicide in 1995. Jennifer Huang in Seattle, 1995 to 2000. He stole her tech startup, sold it for $15 million and disappeared. She's been in therapy for 20 years. 4 wives. 4 lives destroyed. I was just the latest in a pattern spanning 40 years. He's not really Michael Whitfield either, Agent Reed added. His real name is Marcus Wheeler. He's been using false identities since the 80s. We're still untangling how many. I stood up, needing air, needing space from this avalanche of revelations. In the garden, I found Vivian sitting on a bench, staring at the vineyard with hollow eyes. 4 of us, she said without preamble. 4 wives. Patricia's dead. Jennifer's broken. You and I are the only ones who fought back. Did you know about the others when you came here? I suspected. Men like him don't stop. They just refine their technique. She looked at me with something like admiration. But you did what none of us could. You exposed him publicly, spectacularly. You burned down his entire world in front of everyone who mattered to him. It doesn't feel like victory, I admitted. It's not. It's survival. But Barbara, you saved more than yourself. You saved your son from marrying into this nightmare. You saved future victims. You stopped him. We sat in silence, 2 women bonded by betrayal, until Daniel appeared with his laptop. Mom, you need to see this. Olivia's Instagram from 3 years ago. The screen showed photos of Olivia with another man older, wealthy-looking, familiar somehow. The caption read, "Daddy's little girl forever. Love you, Robert. Robert Chen." But that wasn't Olivia's father. Her father was William Chen. This was another Mark, another daddy she'd conned. I'm checking obituaries, Daniel said, typing furiously. Robert Kim, San Francisco real estate mogul, died in a boating accident 3 years ago. Left his entire estate to his beloved daughter, Olivia Kim. $15 million. She'd killed before. Or at least, someone had died conveniently after changing their will in her favor. Agent Reed needs to see this, I said. But Daniel was already sending the information. My phone rang the restaurant manager. Mrs. Whitfield, we have a situation. There's a woman here claiming to be pregnant with Mr. Whitfield's child. Not Olivia. Someone else. Another one. Of course, there was another one. The woman waiting at the restaurant was 22, barely older than Daniel, with scared eyes and shaking hands. Melissa Thompson, a hostess Michael, had hired 6 months ago. He said he loved me, she whispered, tears streaming. Said he was leaving you after the wedding. Said we'd start fresh in Europe. How far along? I asked, my voice gentler than I felt. 4 months. 4 months pregnant while planning my murder with his son's fiancée who was also pregnant. The depravity was bottomless. Melissa, he's going to prison for life. Whatever he promised you was a lie. I know, she sobbed. I saw the news. But the baby. I don't have insurance. I don't have savings. I'm going to lose everything. I looked at this young girl, another victim in Michael's wake of destruction, carrying an innocent child who didn't ask for any of this. Give me your contact information, I heard myself saying. We'll figure something out. Daniel looked at me with surprise. Mom? The children aren't responsible for their parents' crimes, I said quietly. We'll make sure Melissa has proper prenatal care and support. It's what decent people do. After Melissa left, Daniel hugged me tightly. Most people wouldn't be so generous after everything. I'm not most people, and spite won't heal anything. That baby deserves a chance, regardless of its father. Agent Reed called with another update. The murder plot is confirmed. We found searches on Michael's computer accidental deaths in Belize, inheritance law California, how long before remarrying suspicious. He was definitely planning to kill you during that honeymoon trip. Each revelation was another nail in the coffin of the life I'd thought I'd lived. But as the sun set over the vineyard, my vineyard, not his, never really his, I felt something shifting. We're having the 83 investors over tomorrow, I announced to Daniel and Grace, here, at the estate. Barbara, that's not wise, Grace warned. They're angry, desperate. They're victims, just like me. They deserve to hear the truth from me, to know I had no knowledge of the fraud, and they deserve to know I'll do everything in my power to help make them whole. Mom, the vineyard can't cover $42 million in fraud. No, but the FBI will seize Michael's hidden assets, insurance will cover some, and I'll sell the restaurant if I have to. Those people trusted our name. I won't let them suffer for his crimes. If you find this part truly thought-provoking, go ahead and hit like to show your support. Do you feel the same way as the character in this story? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. It would mean starting over at 77. It would mean losing everything I'd built. But integrity was worth more than any empire built on lies. That night, I walked through the house, seeing it differently. Every piece of art, every stick of furniture, every bottle of wine, all of it potentially bought with stolen money, tainted by crime. Tomorrow, I'd start the process of untangling what was real from what was fraud. The wedding that never was had cost $580,000. The fraud totaled $42 million. The lies spanned 40 years and 4 wives. But the truth? The truth was priceless, and it was finally, fully mine. The 83 investors filled my living room, dining room, and spilled onto the terrace. Their faces ranged from confused to furious, from desperate to destroyed. These were people I'd known for years, fellow vintners, restaurant owners, retirees who'd trusted the Whitfield name. Now they were victims of my husband's $42 million fraud. Let her speak, Judge Harrison commanded, having come to support me despite not being an investor herself. The room gradually quieted, though the tension remained thick enough to choke on. I stood before them. No notes, no prepared speech, just the raw truth. I'm not going to insult you with extensive apologies or claim ignorance absolves me. My name is on this vineyard. My reputation brought you here. While I didn't know about Michael's Marcus Wheeler's Ponzi scheme, I benefited from the lifestyle it funded. And for that, I take responsibility. Responsibility? Shouted Tom Chen, a retired teacher who'd invested his entire pension. I'm going to lose my house. My grandchildren's college funds are gone. I know, I said, meeting his eyes. Which is why I'm liquidating everything I own to make restitution. The room erupted. Daniel tried to intervene, but I raised my hand for silence. The Golden Vine is valued at $12 million, the vineyard and estate at $15 million. My personal assets, jewelry and art collection add another $3 million. That's $30 million toward the $42 million stolen. It won't make you whole, but it's everything I have. Mom, no, Daniel whispered, but I continued. The FBI will recover some of Michael's hidden assets. Insurance bonds might cover another portion, but I won't stand by while you suffer for his crimes. My lawyer will contact each of you this week to begin the restitution process. Margaret Spencer stood up. Barbara, you're a victim too. You shouldn't have to. I have to live with myself, I interrupted. I have to look in the mirror knowing I did everything possible to make this right. Keeping my fortune while you lose yours? That's not possible for me. An elderly woman named Ruth Yamamoto, who'd invested her late husband's life insurance, raised her trembling hand. What will you do? Where will you live? I'll rebuild. I'm 77, not dead. I built the Golden Vine from nothing once. I can do it again. This is insane, another investor protested. You're giving up everything for his crimes? I'm choosing integrity over comfort. My name means something to me, and I won't let his actions destroy that. The room fell silent until Tom Chen spoke again, his voice softer. You're serious. You're really going to sell everything. The papers are already drawn up. The restaurant goes on the market Monday. The estate will be listed by month's end. What followed was extraordinary. Ruth Yamamoto stood up, her small frame straight with dignity. I invested $200,000. If Barbara can recover even half of that through her sacrifice, it's more than I expected to see again. I accept her offer. One by one, others stood. Not all, some were too angry, too broken to accept anything, but most recognized I was doing something unprecedented. A wealthy woman choosing poverty to honor her husband's debts. After they left, Daniel found me in the wine cellar, boxing up bottles for auction. You just gave away $30 million, he said, still stunned. I gave away guilt. I bought back my integrity. There's a difference. Where will you live? Grace has a guest house in Sausalito. I'll stay there while I figure out next steps. And the restaurant? You spent 35 years building it. I paused, holding a bottle of the 95 Screaming Eagle, remembering how proud Michael had been to acquire it. It's just a building, Daniel. The real Golden Vine was the knowledge, the creativity, the passion I put into it. Those can't be sold. Emma appeared, her face grave. Mrs. Whitfield, there's been a development. Olivia attempted suicide in federal custody. My hands stilled on the wine bottle. Despite everything, the news hit hard. Is she? Alive, under psychiatric hold. But there's more. She left a confession. Full details of 17 cons over 8 years. The FBI now has enough to prosecute 12 other people who helped her. 17 cons, 8 years. How many families had she destroyed before ours? The baby? Daniel asked quietly. Still viable. Due in 5 months. 5 months. By then, I'd be living in Grace's guest house, starting over at nearly 80, while an innocent child entered the world with both parents in prison. Agent Reed arrived with more revelations. We've traced Michael's Marcus's history back 43 years. The identity theft, the con games, the destroyed women. Barbara, you're the only one who fought back successfully, the only one who exposed him. Patricia Morse didn't get the chance, I said, thinking of the woman who'd taken her own life. Her daughter wants to meet you, Reed said gently. She's been searching for answers about her mother's death for 25 years. Another child destroyed by this man's greed. How many were there? How many children left wondering why their mothers fell apart, why their families imploded? Set up the meeting, I said. That evening, as movers began packing the house for estate sale, I found a box of photos in the attic. Our wedding album, the fake wedding to a man who was already married. Daniel as a baby in Michael's arms, the stepfather who'd planned to murder me. Family Christmases, anniversaries, celebrations, all lies. I built a fire in the fireplace and fed them to the flames one by one. Not from anger, but from necessity. These weren't memories. They were evidence of a crime scene. Mom? Daniel found me watching the last photo burn, one from last Christmas, all of us smiling by the tree, Olivia's hand on his shoulder, Michael's arm around my waist. I'm okay, I said, and meant it. I've been thinking, he said, sitting beside me, about the restaurant. What if we didn't sell it? Daniel, we need the money for restitution. What if we converted it into a foundation? Turn the Golden Vine into a nonprofit that helps fraud victims rebuild their lives? The investors could become board members, sharing in future profits. It wouldn't be immediate cash, but long-term, it could generate more than a straight sale. I looked at my son, seeing Richard's goodness in his eyes, nothing of Michael's corruption. That's brilliant. We could rename it, he continued, warming to the idea. The Phoenix Table. Rising from ashes. Rising from ashes. Yes, that's exactly what we were doing. My phone buzzed with a text from Melissa, the pregnant hostess. An ultrasound photo. Despite everything, a life was growing, innocent of its father's sins. 2 babies, Daniel said quietly, both with him as a father, both mothers in impossible situations. We'll help them both, I said firmly. Not for Michael, but for the children. They didn't choose this. Grace arrived with legal documents. The divorce is finalized. Since the marriage was never legal, it's just paperwork. But Barbara, he's fighting the asset liquidation. Claims the vineyard was bought with his investment. His investment of stolen money? I laughed bitterly. Let him try. There's one more thing. The publisher wants to buy your story. 7 figures for exclusive rights. 7 figures. Enough to help the investors, support the babies, start over properly. Blood money, I said? Justice money, Grace countered. Your story could help other women recognize the signs, escape their own Michaels. I thought of Patricia Morse, dead by suicide. Jennifer Huang, broken beyond repair. Vivian, hiding for 15 years. Maybe my story could save someone else. I'll think about it, I said. That night, in my empty bedroom, I lay in the bed I'd shared with a stranger for 15 years. Tomorrow, this house would no longer be mine. The restaurant would begin its transformation. My old life would officially end. But I wasn't sad, I was free. Free from lies, from manipulation, from the constant drain of supporting a parasite disguised as a partner. The wedding had cost $580,000. The fraud totaled $42 million. The restitution would take everything I'd built. But my freedom, my integrity, my truth, those were worth any price. And tomorrow, I would begin again. 3 weeks after the wedding that never was, I stood in the empty shell of what had been my dream home. The estate sale had been successful. Every piece of furniture, every painting, every Persian rug converted to cash for the defrauded investors. The walls bore pale rectangles where artwork once hung, ghosts of a life built on lies. Daniel found me in the kitchen, running my hand along the marble countertop one last time. The new owners take possession tomorrow, he said gently. Tech couple from San Francisco. They're paying cash $18 million. $18 million that would go directly to the victims' restitution fund. Combined with the Golden Vines conversion to a foundation and the seized assets, we'd recovered nearly $35 million of the $42 million stolen. Mom, Patricia Morse's daughter is here. Sandra. She drove up from Los Angeles. Sandra Morse was 45, with haunted eyes that reminded me of my own reflection these past weeks. She clutched a worn photo album, her knuckles white with tension. Mrs. Whitfield, I've waited 25 years to understand what happened to my mother, she began, her voice trembling. She went from successful businesswoman to broken shell in 3 years. Then she was gone. I took her hands, feeling the tremor in them. Your mother was his first known victim. He was still perfecting his methods. She didn't stand a chance. Tell me about him. Who is he really? I shared everything we'd learned: Marcus Wheeler's 43-year crime spree, the false identities, the systematic destruction of women's lives. Sandra wept as the puzzle pieces of her childhood finally clicked into place. She left journals, Sandra said, opening the album. I couldn't understand them as a child, but now. She showed me pages of increasingly desperate entries, documenting Patricia's confusion as money disappeared, as Marcus gaslit her into doubting her own sanity. One entry stopped my heart. He says I'm imagining things, that I'm sick, that I need help. Maybe I am crazy, maybe the missing money never existed, maybe I never existed. That's what he does, I said quietly. Makes you doubt reality itself, until you're so confused you can't fight back. But you fought. I had advantages your mother didn't. A support system, my own business, and frankly 40 years of his victims' experiences to learn from, even if I didn't know it at the time. Grace arrived then with Agent Reed and unexpected news. Michael Marcus just took a plea deal. Life without parole, but he has to allocate everything, every crime, every victim, every stolen penny. Why would he do that? Daniel asked. Because Olivia flipped completely. Her detailed confession would have meant death penalty charges for the murder conspiracy. This way, he avoids execution. Life in prison. The man who'd planned my death would spend his remaining years in a concrete cell. There was justice in that, even if it felt insufficient. There's more, Reed continued. We found 12 more victims going back to 1979, total theft across all victims, $107 million. The number hung in the air like a toxic cloud. $107 million stolen across 4 decades. How many lives destroyed? How many suicides like Patricia Morse? Emma burst in, laptop in hand, face flushed with excitement. Mrs. Whitfield, the book publisher, increased their offer. $3 million for exclusive rights, plus documentary rights with Netflix. Another $2 million. $5 million total. Enough to make the investors nearly whole, support both babies, and still have something to restart with. Do it, I said without hesitation. Mom, your story, Daniel began. Is exactly that a story that could save someone else? If one woman recognizes the signs and escapes her own Marcus Wheeler, then my humiliation becomes purpose. That afternoon we held the official signing ceremony at the Golden Vine, now the Phoenix Table Foundation. The investors gathered as I signed over the deed, transforming my Michelin-starred restaurant into a nonprofit dedicated to helping fraud victims rebuild their lives. Tom Chen, the teacher who'd lost his pension, would serve as board president. Ruth Yamamoto would manage the victims' support group. Margaret Spencer would oversee the culinary training program for women escaping financial abuse. This restaurant will generate approximately $2 million in profit annually, I announced. Every penny goes to victim restitution and support services. Within 10 years, you'll all be made whole, with interest. What about you? Ruth asked. What will you live on? I'm returning to what I did 40 years ago, private catering. Small dinner parties, intimate gatherings. I'm calling it Barbara's Table. Starting over at 77 is terrifying, but also liberating. The room erupted in something I hadn't expected: applause. These people I'd failed, whose lives had been destroyed by my husband's crimes, were applauding my choice to begin again with nothing. That evening, Melissa arrived for her prenatal appointment, one I was paying for. Her belly had begun to show, 4 months along now. The ultrasound revealed a healthy baby girl. I'm naming her Hope, Melissa said softly, because despite everything, that's what she represents. Hope. Born from deception but raised in truth. Olivia's baby, Millie asked. What happens to him? Born in federal custody in 3 months. Olivia's parents want nothing to do with the child. The shame is too great. Nathan, her legal husband, has disappeared. The baby will go into foster care unless I petition for custody. Daniel nearly dropped his coffee. Mom, you can't be serious. Raising Michael's babies? After everything? They're innocent, Daniel. And they're your half-siblings. Whether we like it or not, they didn't choose their parents or the circumstances of their conception. You're 77 years old, about to be homeless, starting a catering business from scratch, and you want to raise 2 infants? I want to give 2 innocent children a chance at lives not defined by their parents' crimes. Grace has offered to help. We'd raise them together in her Sausalito house. It was insane. It was impossible. It was exactly what needed to happen. That night, my last in the Napa Valley house, I walked through the vineyard one final time. The vines were heavy with fruit, ready for harvest, a harvest that would benefit the fraud victims, not the fraudster. Vivian found me there, having driven up from San Francisco where she now lived, finally free from hiding after 15 years. You're really going to raise his children, she said, not a question but a statement of wonder. Someone has to break the cycle. These children could grow up to be like him, or they could grow up to be forces for good. That choice starts now. You're a better woman than I am. No, just a different one. You survived your way, I'm surviving mine. The next morning, as the moving truck pulled away with the last of my possessions, mostly donated to charity, I stood in the driveway with 2 suitcases. Everything I owned in the world fit in 2 bags. Daniel pulled up in his Tesla. Ready? For what? Poverty? Starting over? Raising babies at nearly 80? For freedom, he said, smiling through tears. For truth. For whatever comes next. I looked back at the estate one last time. 30 years of memories, most of them false. A palace built on quicksand, a dream revealed as nightmare. Then I got in the car and didn't look back. The wedding, $580,000. The fraud, $107 million discovered. The restitution, everything I'd built over 35 years. The freedom, priceless. The future, uncertain but honest. As we drove toward Sausalito, toward Grace's guest house, toward my new life as a 77-year-old starting over with nothing but truth, I felt something I hadn't experienced in decades. Peace. Real, genuine, unshakable peace. The phoenix was rising from the ashes, and she was magnificent. Grace's guest house in Sausalito was a far cry from my Napa estate, 700 square feet total, with a view of the bay that almost made up for the cramped quarters. I stood in the doorway with my 2 suitcases, trying not to think about the walk-in closet I'd left behind that was larger than this entire space. "It's temporary," Grace said gently, though we both knew temporary was relative when you were starting over at 77 with nothing. "It's perfect," I lied, then corrected myself. "No, actually, it's exactly what I deserve. A reality check. A place to figure out who Barbara Whitfield really is when she's not propping up parasites." That first night, I lay on the narrow twin bed a far cry from my California king and made lists. Not of what I'd lost, but of what I needed to do. Register Barbara's table as a catering business. File for custody of 2 unborn children. Testify at Michael's sentencing. Meet with the documentary producers. Write a book that might save someone else. At 3 a.m, my phone rang. The Federal Detention Center. "Mrs. Whitfield? This is Dr. Martinez at the medical ward. Olivia Cross has gone into premature labor. She's asking for you." "Why me?" "She says you're the only real mother she's ever known." The manipulation was breathtaking, even now. But the baby was innocent. Within an hour, Daniel and I were driving towards San Francisco Federal Detention Center, the city lights blurring through fog. "This is insane," Daniel muttered. "She tried to destroy you, and now she wants you there for the birth? She knows I'm the only one who might take the baby. Her parents have disowned her. Nathan vanished. Even the yoga instructor, who's supposedly the father, wants nothing to do with any of this." The federal medical ward was depressing fluorescent lights, armed guards, the constant clang of metal doors. Olivia was in a secured birthing suite, handcuffed to the bed rail, her designer image replaced by a gray detention uniform and reality. "Barbara," she gasped between contractions, "you came." "For the baby," I clarified. "Only for the baby." Her perfect face crumpled. Without makeup, without the carefully constructed facade, she looked like what she was, a 26-year-old girl who'd destroyed her life for money. "I know you hate me," she whispered. "I don't hate you, Olivia. I nothing you. You're just another criminal who targeted my family. But this child didn't target anyone." The labor was difficult. 14 hours of Olivia screaming, crying, begging for her mother who wouldn't come. Despite everything, I found myself holding her hand, coaching her breathing, being the mother figure even in this twisted situation. "Why?" she asked during a brief respite. "Why help me after everything?" "I'm not helping you. I'm helping an innocent child enter the world with at least one person who cares about their well-being." At dawn, baby boy Cross was born 6 pounds, 2 ounces, with a shock of dark hair and his mother's blue eyes. The nurses placed him on Olivia's chest for a moment before regulations required them to take him. "His name is Ryan," she said quietly. "Ryan Hope Cross." Hope. The same middle name Melissa had chosen for her daughter. These children of deception, branded with hope by mothers who had none. "Will you take him?" Olivia asked, tears streaming. "Please, Barbara. I know I have no right to ask. I've already filed the paperwork." "And Michael's other baby?" "Her too." Olivia stared at me like I'd grown wings. "You're going to raise both of Michael's children? After he tried to murder you?" Someone has to break the cycle. These babies didn't choose their father or their circumstances. They deserve a chance at normal lives. "You're 77 years old." 77 with more energy than I had at 50, now that I'm not wasting it on maintaining illusions. The social worker arrived with custody papers. The state was grateful to have a qualified relative, even a step-relative, willing to take the child. Foster care was overwhelmed, and a baby with this much baggage would be hard to place. As I signed the papers making me temporary guardian of Ryan Hope Cross, Olivia grabbed my hand one last time. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for everything. I know it means nothing, but I'm sorry." "You're right," I said, pulling away. "It means nothing. But raise your hand if you truly want this child to have a good life." She raised her shackled hand as high as the chain would allow. Then sign the adoption papers when they come. Let him go completely. Let him become Ryan Whitfield and have a chance at a life without your shadow." She nodded, sobbing as the guards took her back to her cell. 25 to life. She'd be almost eligible for parole when Ryan graduated college. I carried the baby out into the morning sun, this tiny human who weighed less than my former jewelry collection. Daniel waited by the car with an infant seat he'd bought at 3 a.m. from the only open Walmart. "Uncle Daniel," I said, placing Ryan in his arms. "Meet your nephew." He looked down at the baby with a mix of wonder and revulsion. "Mom, this is Michael's son." "No, this is Ryan, who happens to share DNA with a criminal. He's not responsible for that. And neither are you for loving him despite it." We drove to Grace's house in silence, Ryan sleeping peacefully, unaware that his birth had occurred in federal prison, that his mother was a convicted felon, that his father had tried to murder the woman now caring for him. Grace had transformed her garage into a nursery overnight crib, changing table, everything a baby needed. "Melissa's due next month," she said. "All business. We'll need a second crib." "We?" I asked. "You think I'm letting you raise 2 babies alone? I'm 68 and bored out of my mind in retirement. This is the most excitement I've had in years." That afternoon, as I fed Ryan his first bottle in our tiny guest house, the publisher called. They wanted to fast-track the book, have it out within 6 months to capitalize on the media attention. "I can't write a book while caring for an infant," I protested. "That's why we're sending a ghostwriter. She'll interview you for a few hours each day, and we'll have a manuscript in 8 weeks. 8 weeks to distill 43 years of Marcus Wheeler's crimes into something that might save another woman. 8 weeks to turn my humiliation into someone else's salvation." Margaret Spencer visited that evening, bringing supplies and gossip from Napa Valley. "The scandal is all anyone talks about. Your estate sold for $22 million, by the way. The tech couple loved the drama of it all. And the Phoenix table had 300 reservations its first night. Good. The victims need every penny. Barbara, you gave up everything. The least you could do is take some credit." "Credit? For being fooled for 15 years? For enabling fraud through my blindness?" "No, Margaret. I take responsibility, not credit." That night, as Ryan slept in his crib and I lay on my narrow bed, I thought about the strange turns life takes. A month ago, I was preparing for my son's society wedding. Now I was a 77-year-old single mother to my attempted murderer's infant son, living in a guest house, starting a catering company from nothing. The phone rang. Patricia Morse's daughter, Sandra. "Mrs. Whitfield, I wanted you to know I'm starting a foundation in my mother's memory for women who've been financially abused by intimate partners. Would you consider being on the board?" Another board. Another chance to transform tragedy into purpose. "Yes," I said without hesitation. As Ryan stirred in his sleep, making tiny baby sounds, I realized something profound. I'd lost everything: money, estate, restaurant, marriage, trust. But in losing everything, I'd found something more valuable. Purpose. Real, genuine, transformative purpose. Tomorrow would bring more challenges. Melissa's baby arriving soon, Michael's sentencing hearing, the documentary interviews. But tonight, in this tiny guest house with this innocent child, I was exactly where I needed to be. The phoenix wasn't just rising from the ashes. She was soaring. Michael's sentencing hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning, 6 weeks after the wedding disaster. I dressed carefully in the guest house's tiny bathroom, a simple black suit I'd bought from Nordstrom Rack with the meager earnings from my first catering gig. No more designer clothes, no more $5,000 outfits, just Barbara, unadorned and authentic. Ryan was 7 weeks old now, sleeping in Grace's arms as we prepared to leave. Melissa had given birth 2 weeks prior, a healthy girl she'd named Hope Patricia, after Patricia Morse once she'd heard the story. 2 babies under 2 months old in a 700-square-foot space. It was chaos, but honest chaos. "You don't have to go," Grace said, bouncing Ryan gently. The victim impact statement could be read by the prosecutor. "No, I need to look him in the eye one last time. Marcus Wheeler needs to see what he failed to destroy." The federal courthouse in San Francisco was packed. Media. Victims from across 4 decades. And curiosity seekers filled every seat. I saw Jennifer Huang, his second wife, in the back row. She'd flown in from Seattle, finally ready to face him after 23 years. Michael, I still couldn't think of him as Marcus was brought in wearing orange, shackled at wrists and ankles. The man who'd once commanded rooms with his presence now shuffled like the common criminal he'd always been. When our eyes met, he attempted his old charming smile. It looked like a skull's grin. Judge Patricia Blackwood, known for harsh sentences in fraud cases, reviewed the charges. Mr. Wheeler, you've pled guilty to 43 counts of wire fraud, 18 counts of identity theft, conspiracy to commit murder, and racketeering. The pre-sentencing report indicates total theft of $107 million across 43 years. Is this accurate? Yes, Your Honor, Michael replied, his voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. We'll begin with victim impact statements. Mrs. Barbara Whitfield. I stood, my legs steady despite the weight of the moment. At the podium, I unfolded my statement but then set it aside. The prepared words felt insufficient. Your Honor, the man before you stole more than money. He stole trust, innocence, and in Patricia Morse's case, life itself. He's a predator who spent 4 decades perfecting the art of destroying women who loved him. I turned to face Michael directly. You planned to murder me on a cliff in Belize. You were going to push me off and cry crocodile tears at my funeral while collecting $10 million in life insurance. You recruited my son's fiancée herself, a criminal to help destroy our family from within. You got 2 young women pregnant while plotting my death. But here's what you didn't count on, Marcus. You didn't count on the strength you actually gave me by trying to destroy me. Every lie you told, every dollar you stole, every moment you plotted my death, you were actually forging me into something unbreakable. My voice rose, filled with a power I didn't know I possessed. I'm 77 years old, living in a guest house, raising your infant children because they deserve better than your poisonous legacy. I gave away $30 million to repair the damage you caused. I sleep on a twin bed and shop at discount stores, and I have never been freer. The courtroom was silent except for someone's muffled crying, Jennifer Huang, I realized. You thought you were the master manipulator, but you were also being conned. Olivia played you just like you played us. There's poetic justice in that, the predator becoming prey. Your narcissism blinded you to your own vulnerability. I pulled out my phone and showed a photo of Ryan and Hope. These are your children, Marcus. They'll grow up knowing their father is a cautionary tale, but they'll also grow up loved, honest, and nothing like you. I'll make sure of that. Your Honor, I concluded, turning back to the judge, no sentence will undo the damage this man has caused. Patricia Morse is still dead. Jennifer Huang still has nightmares. Vivian Whitfield lost 15 years of her life in hiding. I lost my life's work and my ability to trust, but we survived him. That's our victory, we survived Marcus Wheeler. Other victims spoke. Jennifer's statement was heartbreaking. Vivian's was savage. Tom Chen detailed losing his entire retirement. But it was Sandra Morse, Patricia's daughter, who delivered the killing blow. My mother killed herself on my 8th birthday, she said, her voice steady despite tears streaming down her face. I found her. This man didn't just steal money, he murdered my mother as surely as if he'd pulled the trigger himself. He deserves to die in prison. Michael's lawyer made a weak attempt at mitigation, citing his cooperation and age. Judge Blackwood wasn't moved. Mr. Wheeler, in 30 years on the bench, I've rarely seen such calculated, sustained criminality. You're not just a thief, you're a psychological torturer who targeted vulnerable women for sport and profit. The murder conspiracy alone warrants life imprisonment. She paused, studying him with disgust. I sentence you to life without the possibility of parole plus 200 years to be served consecutively. You will die in federal prison, and the world will be safer for it. Michael collapsed in his chair. Actually collapsed, the reality finally hitting him. He'd spend whatever years remained, maybe 20, maybe 30 in a concrete cell. As guards moved to take him away, he called out, "Barbara, please, tell Daniel I'm sorry." I turned slowly. Daniel doesn't have a stepfather named Michael. That person never existed. Marcus Wheeler is a stranger to us. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. "How does it feel?" they shouted. "Is justice served?" Justice would be Patricia Morse alive, I said into the microphones. Justice would be 43 years of trauma erased. This isn't justice, it's consequence. But it's enough. That evening, we held a gathering at Grace's house, not a celebration but an acknowledgement. Jennifer, Vivian, Sandra, and I sat in the small living room, 4 women bound by one man's evil, sharing wine and stories. "You know what's funny?" Vivian said, slightly drunk. "We're like the worst sorority ever. The Wives of Marcus Wheeler Club." "The survivors of Marcus Wheeler," Jennifer corrected. "We're survivors." Sandra raised her glass. "To my mother, who didn't survive but whose death saved others. The investigation into Marcus started because I never stopped pushing for answers about her suicide." We toasted Patricia Morse, the first known victim whose tragedy ultimately led to Marcus's downfall. Later, as I fed Ryan his nighttime bottle, I thought about the strange mathematics of justice. 107 million stolen, 43 years of crimes, 4 wives, 2 babies, 1 life sentence, numbers that could never balance the human cost. Emma called with news about the Phoenix table. "Mrs. Whitfield, the restaurant netted $300,000 this month. The board voted to distribute the first victim payments next week. $300,000. In 10 months, that would be $3 million returned to victims. In 10 years, $30 million. The Golden Vine, reborn as the Phoenix table, would eventually heal the wounds Marcus created." "There's more," Emma continued. "A production company wants to option the documentary rights for a limited series. They're offering $2 million up front, $3 million on completion. More money for victims, more chances to warn other women, more transformation of tragedy into purpose." As I lay Ryan in his crib next to Hope's, these 2 innocent products of manipulation and deceit, I made them a promise. "You'll know the truth," I whispered. "Age appropriately, carefully, but you'll know. And you'll understand that biology doesn't determine destiny. You can choose to be good, honest, kind. You can choose to be everything your fathers weren't. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, a catering job for 20, the ghostwriter interview, meetings with publishers. But tonight, justice had been served, even if imperfectly. Marcus Wheeler would die in prison. His victims would slowly heal. His children would grow up loved. And I would continue rebuilding at 77. Proof that it's never too late to rise from ashes. The Phoenix was no longer rising, she had risen. 6 months had passed since Michael's sentencing. My small catering business, Barbara's Table, was thriving in an unexpected way. Word had spread about the woman who gave up everything to make things right, and San Francisco society wanted to hire me as much for the story as for the food. I charged premium prices now, every dollar going toward raising Ryan and Hope. The ghostwriter, Catherine Chen, arrived at 7 in the morning for our final interview session. The book was nearly complete, but she had questions about something that had emerged in Michael's prison calls the FBI monitored and shared with victims. "Barbara, he keeps mentioning someone named Victoria. Says she was the mastermind, that he was just following her plan. Victoria Ashton, the accountant who'd fled to Switzerland 5 years ago. More lies from a pathological liar," I said, burping 6-month-old Hope while Ryan played in his bouncer. "Maybe," Catherine said carefully, "but the FBI tracked her down. She's been running similar schemes across Europe. They think Michael might have been telling a half-truth. He was a predator, but he may have had a mentor." The room tilted slightly. A mentor. Someone who taught Marcus Wheeler how to destroy women's lives. My phone rang. Agent Reed. "Barbara, we need to talk. Can you come to the federal building? Bring Grace for support." 2 hours later, we sat in a sterile conference room while Reed laid out files that rewrote everything I thought I knew. Victoria Ashton isn't an accountant. She's Victoria Volkov, former Russian intelligence, who's been running honeypot schemes since the 1970s. She trained Marcus Wheeler when he was just Marcus Wheeler, a small-time con artist in Chicago. The photos showed a woman aging elegantly across decades, always beside wealthy men who later suffered mysterious bankruptcies or deaths. "She's been doing this for 50 years?" Grace asked, horrified. "At least." Marcus was one of 12 protégés she trained. They call themselves the Collectors. Their combined theft totals over $1 billion worldwide. $1 billion. Marcus's $107 million was pocket change in a massive criminal enterprise. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, though I suspected the answer. "Because Victoria has been watching you. She's fascinated by the woman who brought down her star pupil. And Barbara, she's in San Francisco." The blood drained from my face. The babies are safe. We have agents watching the house. But Victoria doesn't work through violence. She works through manipulation. She's already made contact with someone in your life. Who? Reed pulled up security footage from the Phoenix table. There was Margaret Spencer, my friend and fellow restaurant owner, having lunch with an elegant woman in her 70s. Victoria Volko. She's been presenting herself as a Swiss investor interested in the Phoenix table. Margaret has no idea who she really is. I thought I was done with betrayal, but here it was again, in a new form. What does she want? You. She wants to meet the woman who destroyed Marcus Wheeler. Our psychologist thinks she sees you as either a threat to eliminate or a potential recruit. Recruit? I'm 77 years old. Age is irrelevant to her. She's 83 and still running schemes. Barbara, we need your help to catch her. The meeting was arranged for that evening at the Phoenix table. After closing, I wore a wire, FBI agents positioned throughout the building. Margaret had been quietly informed and was devastated at being used, but she played along. Victoria entered like royalty, silver hair perfectly coiffed, wearing vintage Chanel, moving with the grace of a ballet dancer despite her age. Her eyes were like Arctic ice, beautiful and absolutely devoid of warmth. The famous Barbara Whitfield, she said in accented English, settling into a chair like a queen taking her throne. The woman who gave away $30 million for strangers. Either you're the stupidest person alive or the most dangerous. I'm a mother protecting her son. Ah yes, Daniel, handsome boy. And now you're raising Marcus's bastards. Such peculiar choices for someone of your intelligence. The casual cruelty, the probing for weakness. I recognized Marcus's techniques refined to an art form. Did you train him to plan murders too? Or was that his own innovation? She laughed, a sound like crystal breaking. Marcus was always too emotional, too sloppy. The murder plot was idiotic bodies bring investigations. Better to leave them alive but broken, like poor Patricia Morse. You knew about Patricia? I knew about all of them. Marcus reported to me monthly for 20 years. Until he met you and got delusions of independence. So, you've come to, what, punish me for breaking your toy? I've come to offer you a position. The collectors need someone with your particular skills. My skills? You ran a Michelin-starred restaurant for 35 years. You understand luxury, sophistication, the psychology of the wealthy. You could identify marks, make introductions, take a percentage. Comfortable retirement, no more catering for 20s and 50s. The audacity was breathtaking. She was actually trying to recruit me into her criminal organization. You think I'd become like Marcus? Destroy innocent lives for money? Innocent? These men aren't innocent. They're wealthy predators themselves inside traders, tax evaders, men who built fortunes on others' misery. We're simply predators feeding on predators. And the wives? The families destroyed? Collateral damage. Though you didn't seem to mind destroying Olivia and Marcus's families. I exposed crimes. I didn't commit them. She studied me with those frozen eyes. You know, in 50 years, only 3 women have ever brought down one of my collectors. You're the only one who survived the experience. What happened to the others? One committed suicide, the shame was too much. The other had an accident, fell from a balcony in Prague. Terrible tragedy. A threat, elegantly delivered. But I was done being frightened by predators. Victoria, I said, leaning forward, I need you to understand something. I have nothing left to lose. You can't threaten my wealth, I gave it away. You can't threaten my reputation, I destroyed it myself to save others. You can't threaten my family, they're under federal protection. All you can threaten is my life, and at 77, after what I've survived, death doesn't scare me anymore. For the first time, something shifted in her expression. You're serious. I am. And here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave San Francisco tonight. You're going to disappear back to whatever hole you crawled out of. Because if you don't, I'll spend whatever years I have left hunting you down and exposing every member of your sick little club. You couldn't possibly. I exposed Marcus. I have the FBI's ear, the media's attention, and absolutely nothing to lose. Try me. She stood slowly, gracefully. You would have made an excellent collector, Barbara. Such a waste. Agent Reed, I said clearly, knowing the wire was recording. Did you get all that? Victoria's face went white as agents flooded the restaurant. Reed himself placed her in handcuffs. Victoria Volkov, You're under arrest for conspiracy, racketeering, and connection to multiple international fraud schemes. She looked at me with something that might have been respect. You wore a wire. Clever. No. Just done being a victim. As they led her away, she called back, "This isn't over. The collectors are bigger than you know." "Then I guess I'd better get a bigger guest house," I replied. That night, holding Ryan and Hope while Grace poured wine to celebrate, I realized the fight wasn't over. Marcus had been a symptom, Victoria a disease, but there was an entire infection of predators out there. If this part really struck a chord with you, tap that like button to let me know you're with me. Do you see yourself in the character's journey? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I can't wait to hear your take. You're going to keep fighting them, aren't you? Grace asked. Someone has to, and apparently I'm good at it. The book would be published next month. The documentary would air in the fall. Both would warn potential victims, expose tactics, save lives. But now I knew there was more work to do. The Phoenix Table would expand beyond victim support. It would become a resource for exposing these predators, training people to recognize them, building networks of survivors. At 77, I'd found my calling. Not as a restaurateur or a wife or even a mother, though I was all those things. I was a hunter of hunters, a predator of predators. And I was just getting started. The arrest of Victoria Volkov sent shockwaves through international law enforcement. Within 48 hours, the FBI had raided 17 locations across 6 countries, uncovering a criminal network that made Marcus's crimes look amateur. I sat in the federal building, surrounded by boxes of evidence, helping agents identify patterns I'd learned to recognize. "This one," I said, pointing to a photograph of a distinguished man with a grieving woman. "Classic positioning. See how he's comforting her while simultaneously isolating her from others? That's week 1 of the playbook." Agent Reed nodded, adding it to the growing profile. "Barbara, what you've uncovered. The collectors have stolen approximately $1.3 billion over 50 years. You've helped identify 47 active operators. 1.3 billion. The number was incomprehensible. Catherine, my ghostwriter, had rushed over when she heard. This changes everything. The book needs a new ending, no. A whole new section. The book can wait, I said, studying more photos. These women can't. Each image showed the same pattern: wealthy widow or divorcee, charming new companion, gradual isolation, financial destruction. Some ended in suicide like Patricia Morse. Others in accidents like the woman in Prague. The lucky ones just ended up destitute. My phone rang. Daniel, panic in his voice. "Mom, something's wrong at the Phoenix Table. The entire computer system's been wiped. Reservations, financial records, everything." The collectors' retaliation had begun. We rushed to the restaurant to find chaos. The digital infrastructure had been destroyed by ransomware, with a message on every screen: "The Phoenix can burn again." "They're trying to destroy the victim's funding source," Grace said, surveying the damage. "Then we rebuild it," I said firmly. "Every time they knock us down, we get back up. That's what Phoenixes do." Margaret Spencer stepped forward. "Barbara, I've already called my IT team. We'll have you running on our backup servers within hours. The Napa restaurant community stands with you." Within 6 hours, the Phoenix Table was operational again, running on borrowed systems and community support. The solidarity was overwhelming. Competitors became allies, all united against the collectors. That evening, while feeding Ryan and Hope their bottles, I received an encrypted message on my phone. The FBI had given me a secure device after Victoria's arrest. "You think you've won, but you've only scratched the surface. The collectors are everywhere. Your doctor, your banker, your children's future teachers. We are legion." Instead of fear, I felt fury. These parasites thought they could intimidate me with vague threats. They clearly hadn't learned from Marcus's mistake. I called Reed. "I want to go public. Completely public. Press conference tomorrow." "Barbara, that's dangerous. You'll become a target for every collector worldwide." "I'm already a target." "But if we expose their methods publicly, teach people the signs, we can stop them. Secrecy is their weapon. Let's take it away." The press conference was held at the Phoenix Table with victims' advocates, FBI representatives, and survivors from across the country. Every major news outlet attended. I stood at the podium, Ryan sleeping in a carrier against my chest, Hope in Grace's arms beside me. 50 years, I began, my voice carrying across the packed room. For 50 years, an organization called the Collectors has systematically destroyed women's lives for profit. They're not just con artists or gold diggers. They're a sophisticated criminal network with training programs, playbooks, and protection systems. I held up a manual we'd found in Victoria's apartment. This is their handbook. 200 pages detailing how to identify vulnerable targets, isolate them, gaslight them, and destroy them. Today, we're releasing this to the public. Every technique, every tactic, every warning sign. Reporters frantically took notes as I continued. They want you to feel ashamed if you've been victimized. They count on that shame to keep you silent. But shame is their weapon, not ours. We survived. That's not shameful, that's heroic. A reporter raised her hand. Mrs. Whitfield, aren't you afraid of retaliation? I'm a 77-year-old woman living in a guest house, raising 2 infants, running a catering business to make ends meet. I've lost everything material. What exactly can they threaten me with? Death? I've faced that. Poverty? Living it? Humiliation? Already experienced it. I'm unbreakable because I've already been broken and rebuilt myself. Another reporter, what about the children? Aren't you worried about their safety? I looked down at Ryan, then at Hope. These children will grow up knowing the truth about their biological parents. They'll also grow up knowing that biology doesn't determine destiny. They'll be protected not just by law enforcement but by a community of survivors who've adopted them as their own. The Collectors threaten in shadows. We protect in daylight. After the conference, my phone exploded with calls, women from across the country recognizing the patterns in their own relationships. The FBI set up a hotline that received 3,000 calls in the first 24 hours. Sandra Morse called, crying. Barbara, a woman just contacted me. Her mother knew my mother. They were in a support group together in the 80s for women whose husbands had disappeared with their money. There were 12 women in that group, all victims of the Collectors. 12 more women 40 years ago. How many thousands had there been? That night, Emma arrived with devastating news. Mrs. Whitfield, the Phoenix Tables Insurance Company, is pulling coverage. They say you're too high risk now that you've publicly challenged the Collectors. Without insurance, the restaurant couldn't operate. It would close within days, cutting off funding to victims. Then we go grassroots, Daniel said, surprising us all with his determination. Crowdfunding. If the public knows insurance companies are helping the Collectors by denying coverage, there'll be outrage. He was right. The GoFundMe raised $2 million in 48 hours. The story went viral. Insurance company helps criminal organization punish victims. The insurance company reversed their decision within days, but the damage to their reputation was permanent. David had beaten Goliath with social media stones. A week later, Victoria Volkov was found dead in her federal holding cell. Official cause, suicide. But the autopsy showed traces of a rare poison used by former Soviet intelligence. The Collectors cleaned house, Reed explained. She was going to testify in exchange for a reduced sentence. They couldn't allow that. So they killed one of their own? These people have no loyalty except to money. Victoria became a liability. That night, as I rocked Ryan to sleep, I thought about the world these children would inherit. One where predators had manuals and networks, but also one where survivors had voices and platforms. The book, renamed The Collectors, A Survivor's Guide to Predator Networks, would be published next month with a first printing of 500,000 copies. The documentary had been picked up by Netflix as a 6-part series. The Phoenix Table had become a symbol of resistance. But most importantly, women were learning, sharing stories, recognizing patterns, fighting back. At 77, I'd become something I never expected, a warrior, not with weapons, but with truth, transparency, and an absolute refusal to be silenced. The war against the Collectors had just begun, but for the first time, they were the ones afraid. 1 year had passed since Victoria's death. Ryan and Hope were toddling around Grace's guest house, which had been expanded with the book advance money still modest, but enough for 2 small children to grow. The morning started like any other, until Daniel arrived with news that shattered our carefully constructed peace. Mom, Olivia wants to see Ryan. She's petitioning for visitation rights from prison. I set down the sippy cup I'd been filling. my hands suddenly unsteady. She signed away her parental rights. Her lawyer claimed she was coerced, that she was suffering from postpartum depression and wasn't mentally competent to make that decision. Hope toddled over, raising her arms to be picked up. These children knew me as Mama and Grace as Nana. They knew Daniel as Uncle Danny. They didn't know their biological parents existed, let alone that they were criminals. "She can't win this," Grace said, but her voice lacked conviction. The family court hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. Olivia appeared via video link from federal prison, wearing her orange uniform, her once perfect face aged 10 years in one. Without makeup and hair dye, she looked ordinary, just another inmate serving 25 to life. "Your Honor," her court-appointed lawyer argued, "my client has completed parenting classes, therapy, and substance abuse counseling. She's a model prisoner who deserves to maintain a relationship with her son." "A model prisoner," I muttered to my attorney, Mr. Fitzgerald. "She's in for bigamy, fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder." Judge Maria Santos, a grandmother herself, reviewed the files with obvious distaste. "Miss Cross, you conspired to murder the woman now raising your child. Why should this court grant you any access?" Olivia's performance was masterful: tears, trembling voice, the works. "I was manipulated by Michael Whitfield, Your Honor. I was young, vulnerable. He was sophisticated, powerful. I've had time to reflect, to heal, to become the mother Ryan deserves." "The mother he deserves?" I stood up, unable to contain myself. "You were planning to use him as a tool to inherit my money. You were pregnant by another man while engaged to my son. You're a serial con artist who's destroyed multiple families." "Mrs. Whitfield," Judge Santos said gently, "I understand your emotions, but please let your attorney speak." Mr. Fitzgerald stood. "Your Honor, we have evidence that Miss Cross has been corresponding with remaining members of the collectors from prison. She's not reformed, she's networking for her eventual release." He presented printed emails, smuggled communications showing Olivia trying to establish connections with other con artists, planning her next moves for when she got out in 20 years. "Furthermore," he continued, "there's the matter of Hope Patterson, the other child Mrs. Whitfield is raising. The biological mother, Melissa Thompson, has been a model of redemption, working, attending community college, visiting her daughter appropriately. She supports Mrs. Whitfield's guardianship completely. This shows what genuine rehabilitation looks like versus manipulation." Melissa had indeed been extraordinary. She'd gotten clean, found work as a restaurant hostess, and visited Hope every Sunday. She never asked for money, never created drama, just quietly built a relationship with her daughter while respecting my role as primary caregiver. Judge Santos turned to the video screen. "Miss Cross, I'm denying your petition. You show no genuine remorse, only strategic positioning. Contact with you would be detrimental to the child's well-being." Olivia's mask finally slipped. "That old witch stole my baby. She destroyed my life. I'll get out eventually, and when I do..." The judge cut the video feed. "That outburst will be added to her file. Any future petitions will be automatically denied." That evening, as I bathed Ryan and Hope together, their giggles echoing off the bathroom walls, I made a decision. They needed to know the truth age-appropriately, carefully, but honestly. "Uncle Danny's coming for a special dinner," I told them in simple words they could understand. "We're going to tell you a story about where you came from." Daniel arrived with photo albums, not of Michael and Olivia, but of our life before them. Pictures of the real Richard, Daniel's biological father. Images of the Golden Vine in its glory days. Photos of the wedding that never happened, carefully edited to remove the traumatic scenes. "You two are very special," I began, holding both toddlers on my lap. "You came to Mama and Nana because your birth parents couldn't take care of you. They made bad choices and had to go away." "Where?" Hope asked in her tiny voice. "To a place where people go when they break important rules. But that's not your fault. You're perfect exactly as you are." "Bad people?" Ryan asked, his vocabulary limited but his understanding clear. "People who made bad choices," Daniel corrected gently. "But you get to make your own choices. Good ones." As they grew, we'd tell them more. About resilience, about choosing your own path, about how love isn't about blood but about showing up every day. But for now, this was enough. Catherine called with news about the book. Barbara, it's been on the bestseller list for 6 months. We've sold over 2 million copies worldwide. The publisher wants a sequel focusing on recognizing collector tactics. 2 million people learning to protect themselves. That was worth more than any fortune I'd lost. The Phoenix table had evolved too. No longer just a restaurant supporting victims, it had become a training center. We ran workshops on financial literacy, emotional manipulation recognition, and recovery from psychological abuse. The wait list was months long. Emma, now managing director, reported our impact. 300 women have gone through our program. 40 have successfully extracted themselves from abusive financial relationships. 8 collectors have been arrested based on our intelligence gathering. The mathematics of recovery? Slow, steady, but undeniable. That night, after the children were asleep, Grace and I sat in our tiny living room planning their future. The book money and documentary fees had created education funds for both children. They'd have chances their biological parents had tried to steal from others. What happens when they're teenagers? Grace asked, when they can look up their parents online? We tell them everything. The fraud, the attempted murder, the network of criminals. But also about redemption, about Melissa's recovery, about Sandra Morse turning her mother's tragedy into a foundation that saved lives. And if they want to meet Michael or Olivia? Then we support that decision when they're adults, but armed with truth, not fairy tales. My phone buzzed with an encrypted message. Another woman recognizing collector tactics in her relationship, reaching out for help. They came daily now, women from around the world seeing the patterns, finding the courage to fight back. At 78 years old, living in a converted garage, raising 2 toddlers, running a catering business and a nonprofit, I should have been exhausted. Instead, I felt more alive than I had during 15 years of marriage to a phantom. The children would grow up knowing their origin story not as victims but as phoenixes themselves, rising from the ashes of their parents' crimes. They'd understand that everyone gets to write their own story, regardless of how it began. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, a speaking engagement at Stanford, a meeting with FBI trainers, a birthday party catering that would help pay for diapers. But tonight, listening to the peaceful breathing of 2 innocent children, I knew we'd already won the only battle that mattered. We'd broken the cycle. We'd chosen truth over comfortable lies. We'd built a family from the ruins of betrayal. The phoenix hadn't just risen, she'd built a nest for the next generation. 3 years had passed since the trial. Ryan and Hope were 5 now, starting kindergarten at a private school in Sausalito that I paid for with catering jobs that increasingly came from Silicon Valley tech companies. They wanted the infamous Barbara Whitfield to serve their events, part cautionary tale, part inspiration, part morbid curiosity. The morning started with an encrypted email that made my blood freeze. Mrs. Whitfield, this is Warden Patricia Hughes from FCI Dublin. Michael Whitfield Marcus Wheeler is dying. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. He has weeks, perhaps days. He's requesting to see you and Daniel. No obligation, but I thought you should know. I set down my coffee, watching Ryan and Hope eat their Cheerios, blissfully unaware that their biological father was dying in a federal prison 40 miles away. They knew him only as a man who made bad choices, a shadow figure in their carefully edited origin story. Daniel arrived within an hour of my call, his face tight with conflicting emotions. Absolutely not, he said immediately. He tried to murder you. He destroyed our family. He dies alone. That's your choice for you, I said carefully. But what about them? I nodded toward the children playing with blocks. One day, they'll ask if we gave him a chance to say goodbye, to apologize, to be human at the end. He was never human, Mom. He was a parasite. But I saw uncertainty in his eyes. Daniel had loved Michael for 15 years, seen him as the father Richard couldn't be after dying young. That love, however corrupted by betrayal, didn't simply disappear. Grace weighed in pragmatically. If you go, you control the narrative for the children. If you don't, you leave them with questions that might torment them later. Agent Reed, whom I'd called for advice, offered protection. We can arrange a secure visit. Marcus has actually been cooperating with ongoing investigations. He's given us 12 more collectors, trying to clear some karma before he dies. Karma, as if exposing other criminals could erase 43 years of destroyed lives. The next morning, I stood outside FCI Dublin with Daniel. We'd left the children with Grace, telling them we had important grown-up business. The prison medical ward smelled of disinfectant and despair, fluorescent lights humming like dying insects. Marcus lay in a hospital bed, a skeleton wearing his face. The cancer had eaten him from the inside, poetic justice for a man who'd consumed others' lives. His eyes, once capable of such convincing warmth, were hollow, frightened. "Barbara," he whispered, his voice like rustling paper, "you came. I came for the children. So they'll know I gave you a chance to leave them something other than crime and shame." He struggled to sit up, IVs tangling. "I have something for them. Information." Daniel tensed. "More schemes? More hidden money?" "No. Protection." Marcus coughed, specks of blood hitting his lips. "The collectors want revenge for Victoria. They've put a bounty on Barbara, $5 million. But I know who's coming." Even dying, even exposed as Marcus Wheeler, he was still trading information like currency. "Who?" I asked, hating that I needed to know. "Sebastian Cross. Olivia's supposed husband, Nathan? He's not real. Sebastian is Victoria's son, raised in the collectors from birth. He's been planning something since her arrest." My blood went cold. We'd been investigating the wrong person. Nathan Cross, who'd seemed like another victim, was actually collector royalty. "He's after the children," Marcus continued, each word an effort. "Sees them as rightfully Olivia's his operative, not his wife. They want to raise Ryan and Hope as next-generation collectors." The room spun. For 3 years, we'd thought we were safe, that the threat was contained, but the collectors were playing a longer game. "Where is he?" Daniel demanded. "Close. He's been watching, waiting for the right moment, but I can stop him." "How?" "You're dying in federal prison." Marcus smiled, a ghost of his old manipulative charm. "I've been corresponding with him, pretending to support his plan. He trusts me professional courtesy among thieves. I can arrange a meeting, tell him I have hidden resources for the cause. The FBI can arrest him." "Why would you do this?" I asked, searching his gaunt face for truth. "Because I'm dying. And I just realized something. Of all my victims, you're the only one who fought back and won. You're raising my children with more love than I ever could have. Maybe if I help save them, some small part of me lives on as something other than a cautionary tale." It was manipulation, of course. Everything with Marcus was. But it was also possibly true. The dying sometimes find clarity, even monsters. Reed had been listening through a wire. "We can work with this. Set up the meeting, catch Sebastian, roll up more of the network." Over the next 3 days, we orchestrated the trap. Marcus, fighting through morphine haze, sent encrypted messages to Sebastian, promising him access to hidden accounts, the children's locations, everything he wanted. Sebastian took the bait. The meeting was set for a warehouse in Oakland. I insisted on being there, despite everyone's protests. "He's hunting my children. I need to see his face, understand the enemy." From a surveillance van, I watched Sebastian Cross enter the warehouse. He was younger than expected, maybe 35, with dead eyes that reminded me of Victoria. He'd been raised from birth to be a predator, trained in emotional manipulation like other children learn arithmetic. "Marcus is dead," Sebastian said flatly as FBI agents surrounded him. "Died 2 hours ago, but he gave me what I needed." My heart stopped. Had Marcus double-crossed us even in death? Sebastian smiled. "He gave me confirmation that Barbara Whitfield is exactly who we thought, a weak, elderly woman hiding behind federal protection. The children will be easy to take once she's gone." "The only place you're going is federal prison," Reed announced, stepping out with his team. Sebastian laughed as they cuffed him. "You think this ends with me? I'm one of hundreds. The children have our blood. They belong to us." "They belong to themselves," I said, stepping out of the van despite protocol. "And they'll grow up knowing exactly what you are. Parasites who confuse manipulation with strength. You're 78 years old. How long can you protect them? Longer than you'll be free. Life without parole for conspiracy to kidnap, plus whatever else we find. The collectors are finished. We've existed for 60 years. In shadow, in secret. Now you're exposed. Every technique, every member we identify, every story we tell makes you weaker. Transparency is your kryptonite." As they led him away, Sebastian called out, Marcus said to tell you something. He said he actually loved you, in his broken way. Said you were the only real thing in his fake life. Marcus had died while we were setting the trap, never knowing if his last manipulation had succeeded. The warden said his final words were, "Tell Barbara she won." That night I sat with Ryan and Hope, reading them bedtime stories, their warm little bodies safe against mine. They didn't know their biological father had died that day, wouldn't know for years. When they were ready, I'd tell them he'd done one good thing at the end, helped protect them. "Mama," Hope said sleepily, "will you always keep us safe?" "Always," I promised, knowing it was a lie. I couldn't always keep them safe, but I could teach them to be strong, to recognize predators, to choose truth over comfortable lies. The next morning the news broke. Sebastian Cross's arrest, the revelation of second-generation collectors, Marcus Wheeler's death, it dominated headlines. The book sales surged again. The Phoenix table was booked solid with people wanting to learn protection techniques. At 78, I should have been tired. Instead, I felt renewed purpose. The collectors weren't gone, but they were wounded, exposed on the run. And 2 innocent children were safe for another day, growing up free from the poisonous legacy their biological parents had tried to create. The war wasn't over. But this battle was won. 5 years had passed since Marcus died. Ryan and Hope were 10 now, sharp-eyed children who understood more than we sometimes wished. The morning everything changed again started with Hope asking a question at breakfast that stopped my heart. "Mama, why does that woman keep watching us at school?" I set down the orange juice carefully. "What woman, sweetheart?" "She has gray hair like you but fancy clothes. She stands across from the playground. Yesterday she waved at me." Grace and I exchanged looks. We'd maintained security protocols, but 5 years of peace had made us complacent. "Did she say anything to you?" Grace asked gently. "No, but she had a camera. She took pictures when Ryan scored his soccer goal. Within an hour I had the school security footage. The woman was elegant, perhaps 70, watching my children with intense focus. Something about her seemed familiar, but I couldn't place it. Agent Reed, now head of the Financial Crimes Division, ran facial recognition. The results made my knees weak. Jennifer Huang, Marcus's second wife, the one we thought was broken beyond repair. Jennifer, who'd supposedly spent 23 years in therapy, destroyed by Marcus's abuse. But the woman in the footage didn't look broken. She looked purposeful. "She's been corresponding with Olivia in prison," Reed continued. "Monthly letters for 2 years. We monitoring them but found nothing actionable. Seemed like victim support." "Or planning," I said, the old paranoia flooding back. Daniel arrived as we were reviewing Jennifer's recent history. She's rebuilt completely. Tech executive worth $40 million, venture capitalist focusing on women-led startups. The media calls her the Phoenix of Silicon Valley. "Another Phoenix," Grace muttered. "How many of us are there?" The answer came that evening when Jennifer knocked on our door. Not hiding, not sneaking, just standing there in a designer suit, looking like the successful executive she'd become. "Hello, Barbara. We need to talk about our children." "They're not your children," I said, not opening the door fully. "No, but they're Marcus's. And I think I have a right to see the offspring of the man who destroyed my life, then gave me the strange gift of rebuilding it." Against every instinct, I let her in. She sat in our modest living room, her expensive perfume at odds with our IKEA furniture. "You've done well with limited resources," she observed. "The children seem happy, well-adjusted, nothing like their father." "What do you want, Jennifer?" "To help, actually." She pulled out a folder. "I've been tracking the collectors for 20 years, long before anyone knew they existed. Marcus was my entry point into understanding them, but I went deeper." The folder contained photographs, financial records, a web of connections spanning decades. There are 307 active collectors worldwide. I've identified 112. The FBI has found 47. Combined, we're not even halfway. Why share this now? Because Olivia is getting out. The room went cold. That's impossible. She got 25 to life. Sentence commutation. She's been the perfect prisoner, gave up 17 more collectors, helped solve cold cases. With overcrowding and good behavior, she's out in 6 months. 6 months. Hope and Ryan would be 10 and a half, old enough to be thoroughly confused by their biological mother's return, but not old enough to protect themselves from her manipulation. She can't get custody, Daniel said firmly. She signed away her rights. She's not seeking custody, she's seeking vengeance. Jennifer pulled out another document. She's been studying you, Barbara. Every interview, every article, every social media post about you. She knows your routines, your weaknesses, your entire life. Let her come, I said with more confidence than I felt. I'm 83 years old. What's she gonna do, outlive me? That's exactly her plan. She's 29. You're 83. She just has to wait, be patient, seem reformed. Eventually you'll die, and she'll swoop in as the reformed biological mother. The long game, of course. Collectors always played the long game. That night, unable to sleep, I found Ryan reading under his covers with a flashlight my book, the one I'd tried to keep from him until he was older. You knew Dad was bad, he said, not a question. Real bad. Not just made bad choices bad. Yes, sweetheart. And my birth mom? She's bad too? She's complicated. That means bad, but you don't want to say it. 10 years old and already too perceptive. Ryan, you and Hope are not your biological parents. You're who you choose to be. I choose to be like you, he said simply. You fought bad people and won. The next morning, I made a decision that surprised everyone, including myself. I called the prison and requested a video visit with Olivia. She appeared on screen looking different, older, yes, but also calculatedly softer. She'd learned to project warmth, probably from prison therapy programs, but her eyes remained cold. Barbara, I'm surprised. I know you're getting out. I know you're planning something. I'm here to make you an offer. I'm listening. $1 million. Clean money from my book and documentary earnings. You take it, start fresh anywhere except California, and never contact the children. She laughed, that crystalline sound I remembered from the wine cellar. You think I want money? I can make money. I want what you stole from me. I stole nothing. You threw it away for a con that failed. You turned my son against me. Your son doesn't know you exist beyond birth mother who couldn't care for him. He's happy. Leave him that way. He's mine. He's his own person. And if you come near him, I'll ensure everyone knows exactly who you are, what you did. Your face will be on every parent watch list in America. You'll be dead soon anyway, old woman. Maybe. But Jennifer Huang won't be. Neither will Grace, or Daniel, or the 100 women I've trained to recognize predators. You'll be watching your back forever. The call ended with her furious disconnection, but I knew this wasn't over. Olivia was coming, and we needed to be ready. Jennifer stayed for dinner that night, watching Ryan and Hope with curious intensity. They're nothing like him, she observed. How did you do it? Love, consistency, truth. Everything Marcus never provided. I couldn't have children after what he did to me. The stress, the trauma, my body just shut down. These two are the closest I'll ever get to reclaiming what he stole. They're not replacement children, Jennifer. No. But maybe they're proof that his poison doesn't have to be permanent. That recovery is possible. That night, after the children were asleep, Jennifer made an unexpected offer. I want to establish trust funds for them. $5 million each. But controlled by you until they're 25. With strict conditions about education and character development. Why? Because I spent 20 years rebuilding from Marcus's destruction. I want his biological children to never face that. To start from strength. Not survival. And in return? Nothing. This isn't a transaction. It's balance. He took everything from me. I built it back tenfold. Now I help his children become everything he wasn't. It was perfect and terrible. The children would have resources, protection, futures, but they'd also have another connection to their father's victims, another reminder of the destruction in their origin story. I'll think about it, I said. As Jennifer left, she turned at the door. Olivia won't stop, you know, even if you're gone. She'll wait until Daniel's vulnerable, or until the children are teenagers, rebellious, looking for identity. She's patient. Then we'll teach them to be more patient, to be suspicious of sudden affection, of too good to be true offers, of anyone who claims biology equals destiny. The next morning, I sat Ryan and Hope down for a harder conversation than we'd ever had. About their birth parents, about the collectors, about the danger that would always exist in shadows. They listened with the gravity of children who'd always known they were different, finally understanding why. "So we're like superhero kids," Hope said. "But instead of superpowers, we have super careful training." "Something like that," I agreed. "Good," Ryan said firmly, "because I never want to hurt people like they did." Olivia was released on a Tuesday morning in October, exactly 11 years after the wedding that never was. I watched from my car as she walked out of FCI Dublin, no longer the polished architect in designer clothes, but a 39-year-old woman in donated jeans and a gray sweater. Someone was waiting for her, a man I didn't recognize, expensive suit, Tesla Model S. "New mark or old collector?" Grace asked from the passenger seat. "Does it matter?" "She's already working." We followed at a distance as they drove to San Francisco, to a luxury apartment building in Pacific Heights. She'd arranged housing, transportation, probably employment, all while in prison. The collector's network ran deeper than we'd ever imagined. That evening, my phone rang. Olivia. "Hello, Barbara. I wanted you to know I'm out. Legally, completely within my rights. Congratulations on your freedom. Stay away from my children." "Your children?" "I think you mean my son and Michael's daughter." "The courts think otherwise." Courts can be convinced to reconsider, especially when the petitioner is reformed, employed, and stable, while the guardian is 83 and showing signs of decline. Signs of decline? "Oh, haven't you noticed? The way you've been forgetting appointments? The confusion with finances? The complaints from catering clients?" My blood went cold. There had been no forgotten appointments, no confusion, no complaints. But she was creating a narrative, planting seeds. Within a week, small things started happening. My catering bookings were canceled with no explanation. Emails supposedly from me contained typos and confused dates. Someone called Adult Protective Services, claiming I'd been seen wandering confused in Sausalito. "She's gaslighting you from a distance," Daniel said, reviewing the evidence, "creating a paper trail that you're becoming incompetent." Ryan and Hope, now 11, were more perceptive than we'd hoped. "Someone's trying to hurt Mama," Hope announced at dinner. "Kids at school are saying weird things about her being sick." "What kind of things?" I asked carefully. "That you're too old to take care of us. That our real mom is back and wants us." Ryan's face was tight with anger. "I told them our real mom is right here." The campaign escalated. Photos appeared on social media, me looking confused at the grocery store, actually checking a shopping list, me stumbling, tripping on a crack, me talking to myself on a Bluetooth call. Each image carefully cropped and captioned to suggest cognitive decline. Jennifer Huang called with disturbing news. She's raised $4 million from collectors worldwide. They see her as Victoria's heir, wanting revenge for their fallen queen. "She's not just coming for the children, she's coming to destroy you completely first." The documentary producer, Netflix, wanted to film a Where Are They Now segment. I almost declined until I realized it was an opportunity. If Olivia wanted to play a public perception game, I could play too. The filming took place at the Phoenix table. I demonstrated knife skills that surgeons would envy, rattled off complex recipes from memory, managed simultaneous catering orders while being interviewed. Every shot screamed competence. "Mrs. Whitfield," the interviewer asked, "Olivia Cross was released last month. Are you concerned?" "Concerned? No. Vigilant? Always. She's a convicted criminal who conspired to murder me. The fact that she's free doesn't change what she is, a predator who sees children as tools for financial gain. She claims to be reformed. She claimed to love my son too. Claims are her specialty. Truth isn't." The segment aired the next week, viewed by 12 million people. Olivia's carefully crafted narrative of the confused elderly guardian crumbled against footage of me teaching advanced cooking techniques while discussing the neuroscience of manipulation. Her response was swift and vicious. A lawsuit for defamation, seeking $10 million. "She knows you don't have $10 million, Mr. Fitzgerald explained, but fighting the lawsuit will drain your resources, energy, and time. It's another form of attack." The legal papers were served while I was picking up Ryan and Hope from school. The process server made sure other parents saw, heard him loudly declare the lawsuit, humiliation as weapon, classic collector technique. That night, Hope crawled into my bed, something she hadn't done in years. "Mama, are we going to lose you?" "Never," I promised, holding her close. "Not to her, not to anyone." "But you're old," she said with a child's brutal honesty. Older than everyone else's grandmas even. Age is just numbers, sweetheart. What matters is that I'm here, I'm strong, and I'm not going anywhere. But privately I worried. At 83, how many more fights did I have in me? The answer came from an unexpected source. Melissa Thompson, Hope's biological mother, arrived at our door with a lawyer and a proposal. "I've been clean for 11 years, she said. "I have a stable job, an apartment, a life. I'm not seeking custody of Hope. You're her mother in every way that matters, but I want to formally adopt Ryan." The room went silent. Even Grace was speechless. "Hear me out," Melissa continued. "If something happens to you, the court might consider Olivia for Ryan. But if I'm his legal mother, she has no claim. I'm younger, stable, and I've proven my commitment to these children by respecting your role for over a decade." It was brilliant. Melissa adopting Ryan would create a legal firewall against Olivia. "What about Hope?" Daniel asked. "I adopt her," he said firmly. "I'm their uncle already. Make it official." 2 adoptions, creating multiple legal guardians, making it impossible for Olivia to claim either child. Olivia's reaction was predictable rage disguised as legal action. More lawsuits, claims of conspiracy, demands for visitation. But judges weren't impressed by a convicted felon's demands versus a stable family structure. The final confrontation came at a mediation hearing. Olivia across the table, still beautiful but harder now, prison having carved away any softness. "You're going to die soon," she said bluntly. "Then what? You think that waitress and your son can raise my child? Better than you could. They'll raise him with love, not manipulation, with honesty, not schemes. I'm his mother. You're an egg donor who happened to carry him. Motherhood is earned through presence, sacrifice, love. You've provided none of those. I'll never stop fighting for him." I leaned forward, meeting her cold eyes with my own steel. "Good. Fight forever. Waste your life trying to claim a child who will never know your name. Because every moment you spend fighting is a moment you're not destroying someone else's life." She stood to leave, then turned back. "Michael was right about one thing. You're harder than you look. Michael was wrong about everything, including underestimating me. Don't make his mistake." That night, celebrating the failed mediation with our strange, beautiful family, Grace, Daniel, Melissa, Jennifer Huang, who'd become an unexpected ally, and the 2 children we'd all sworn to protect, I realized something profound. We'd won not by defeating the collectors, but by building something stronger than their network of manipulation. We'd built a family of choice, bonded by truth rather than blood, strengthened by surviving attempted destruction. At 83, I might not have many years left. But I'd ensured that when I was gone, Ryan and Hope would be surrounded by people who'd chosen to love them, who'd fought for them, who'd never see them as tools but always as treasures. The phoenix had risen, the phoenix had nested, the phoenix had ensured the next generation would soar. 10 years later, I sat in the garden of the Phoenix table on my 93rd birthday, watching Ryan and Hope, now 21, serve lunch to survivors of financial abuse. They'd both chosen to work at the restaurant during college, Ryan studying psychology, Hope pursuing law. Not because we asked them to, but because they understood their unique position as living proof that biology doesn't determine destiny. "Mama Barbara," Hope said, using the name she'd kept even as an adult, "someone's here to see you." I expected another journalist or documentary filmmaker. What I didn't expect was Olivia, now 49, standing in the doorway with gray threading through her hair and something I'd never seen in her eyes before: genuine humility. "Hello, Barbara. I know I'm violating the restraining order by being here. You can call the police." But I needed to say something before she paused, choosing her words carefully, before it's too late. At 93, too late wasn't an abstract concept. My body was failing, though my mind remained sharp as the knives I once wielded. The doctors gave me months, maybe a year. Cancer, like Michael's, though I'd face it differently than he had. "Speak," I said simply. Ryan appeared, protective, his father's height but with none of Michael's predatory charm. "You need to leave, now." "It's okay," I told him. "Let her talk. After 20 years, let's hear what she has to say." Olivia sat across from me, this woman who'd tried to destroy everything I loved. "I came to thank you," she said, words that shocked everyone present, "for raising Ryan to be everything his biological parents weren't. for giving him the knowledge to recognize manipulation, the education to understand psychology, the strength to choose goodness. Why now? Grace asked, suspicious even at 78. Because I'm dying too, Olivia admitted. Liver disease from years of prison, food, and stress. 3 months, they say. And I realized I'm going to die having created nothing but destruction. Except for Ryan. He exists because of me, but he thrives because of you. That's the only good thing I ever did, give birth to someone you could raise right. Ryan stepped forward, his face unreadable. You're nothing to me. Not a mother, not even a memory. Just a cautionary tale Barbara taught me to learn from. The words were harsh but true. This was the lesson we'd taught both children, that DNA means nothing compared to daily choice, that education about predators was their inheritance, not money or genetics. I know, Olivia said quietly. I'm not here for forgiveness or recognition. I'm here because the collectors are making one last play. There's something you need to know. Even dying, even humbled, she was still trading information. Some habits die harder than people. Sebastian Cross escaped from federal prison last week. He's coming for the children, sees them as the rightful heirs to Victoria's empire. He has $30 million and a team of 12 collectors backing him. The room went cold. Sebastian, whom we thought was serving life without parole, was free and funded. How? Daniel demanded. Inside help, guards who were secretly collectors. They've been planning this for 10 years, waiting until Barbara was weak enough that removing her wouldn't raise suspicions. An old woman dying of cancer who would question it. So you came to warn us? I asked, studying her ravaged face. I came to offer you something more. My testimony, my knowledge of their entire network. I know all 423 active collectors worldwide. Names, methods, accounts, everything, in exchange for one thing. Which is, let me die knowing I did one thing right. Let me help destroy the organization that destroyed me, that I helped perpetuate. Let me give Ryan and Hope the ultimate protection, the complete annihilation of the collectors. It was the perfect trap or the perfect redemption. With Olivia, you never knew which. The FBI can protect, Reed began. The FBI has been infiltrated, Olivia interrupted. 3 agents are collectors. I know which ones. This information dies with me unless you accept my offer. We had 72 hours to decide. Olivia would return with everything or nothing. That night, unable to sleep from both cancer pain and anxiety, I found Ryan in the kitchen at 3 a.m., reading my old journals from the wedding that wasn't. Were you ever happy with him? He asked. With Michael? Before you knew? I thought I was. That's the lesson here, Ryan. Happiness built on lies isn't real happiness. It's sedation. The pain of truth is better than the comfort of deception. Olivia seemed different. Or, she seems to seem different. That's what collectors do, seem to be what you need them to be. But what if she's really changed? Then her information will save hundreds of future victims. And if she hasn't, we'll know soon enough. The truth always reveals itself, just sometimes not on our timeline. Hope joined us, unable to sleep either. I've been thinking about the education we received, she said. Not just school, but the constant lessons about recognizing manipulation, understanding psychology, seeing through facades. We're like weaponized children against predators. Is that bad? I asked. No. It's the greatest gift you could have given us, the knowledge that monsters exist, but also that we don't have to become them or be destroyed by them. The next morning brought shocking news. Sebastian Cross had been found dead in Mexico, along with 11 other collectors. Poison, the same kind that killed Victoria. Olivia arrived at noon with 17 boxes of documents and a letter. I killed them, she stated simply. All 12. The same poison I've been taking in small doses for months, building immunity while knowing it would destroy my liver. I knew they'd meet with me, trust me as Victoria's chosen successor. Last night, we toasted to destroying Barbara Whitfield. They died within minutes. Murder. She'd committed mass murder of mass manipulators. The FBI will arrest you, Reed said, though he seemed conflicted. For 3 months? I'm dying anyway. But those documents contain everything, every collector, every victim, every hidden account, 411 more criminals you can arrest. Consider it my doctoral dissertation in redemption. She turned to Ryan one last time. I know I'm not your mother. Barbara is. but I need you to know that watching you become everything Michael and I weren't is the only thing that makes my existence worthwhile. You're proof that evil doesn't have to be inherited. She died 2 weeks later in federal custody, having given the FBI the largest criminal network takedown in history. The collectors were finished. Their 60-year reign of manipulation ended by one of their own. At her request, she was cremated, and her ashes scattered at sea, no grave, no marker, no trace except the lives she'd saved by her final betrayal of her own kind. Standing in that garden now, on my 93rd birthday, surrounded by the family we'd built from ruins, Daniel, Grace, Jennifer, Melissa, Ryan, Hope, and dozens of survivors who'd become friends, I understood the ultimate lesson of our story. Love isn't born from blood or promises or even shared history. Love is born from choice, daily choice to show up, to fight for each other, to choose truth over comfortable lies. The education we'd given Ryan and Hope wasn't about fear but about power, the power to recognize predators, to refuse manipulation, to build genuine connections based on honesty. Mama Barbara, Hope said, raising a glass of champagne despite my doctor's warnings, you saved us. No, I corrected, looking at these magnificent young adults who'd emerged from such poisoned origins. We saved each other. That's what real families do. Friends, if you're watching this video on the Voices of Auntie Rose channel, I hope you understand the knowledge we've shared today, that redemption is possible but not guaranteed. That blood doesn't determine destiny, that sometimes the families we choose are stronger than those we're born into. The education we give our children about recognizing predators is more valuable than any inheritance. How does this story resonate with your life? Have you known collectors, those who manipulate and destroy for gain? Have you been a phoenix, rising from someone else's attempt to burn you down? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your stories, your lessons, matter. Don't forget to subscribe to Voices of Auntie Rose and hit that notification bell. Every day, we share stories of survival, redemption, and the incredible strength of the human spirit. Like this video if it touched your heart, and share it with someone who needs to hear that they're stronger than their circumstances. The greatest knowledge I can leave you with is this. You are not your trauma. You are not your origins. You are not what was done to you. You are what you choose to do next. To everyone watching, I wish you good health, daily joy, and inner peace. May you find the strength to rise from whatever ashes life has left you in. May you build families of choice filled with truth and love. And may you always remember that it's never too late to become who you really are. Until we meet again in the next video, this is your Auntie Rose, reminding you that every ending is also a beginning. The phoenix always rises. Always. Goodbye for now, and see you in our next story of triumph over tragedy.